Point of privilege.
Sorry, let me start again. My apologies. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Halton Catholic District School Board on Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and will be posted on the board's YouTube channel. Tonight, we have most trustees attending in person and a few participating remotely. In order to be recognized, please use the hand up feature in Teams to be automatically placed in queue. For those in the boardroom, please remember to turn your desk mics on when you speak. For those attending remotely, please remember to turn on your microphone and cameras when you are recognized to speak, and turn your cameras and mic off otherwise. Trustees, please remember that if you speak when you are not recognized or if you do not have the floor, your mic will be muted. We have guests online tonight, and I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. May 17th marks the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biophobia. Today and every single day, we are committed to nurturing a safe, welcoming, and inclusive school so that all our 2S LGBTQ+ members in our community feel a positive sense of belonging and well-being. This week, we also celebrate the blessing and dedication of 2 new school sites in Oakville, St. Nicholas Catholic Elementary School and the Thomas Mertens Center. Both of these dedication ceremonies have been postponed due to the COVID pandemic. So we are grateful for the opportunity to celebrate these 2 school communities. I would like to thank all our staff, students, and families and parishes who participated, and Bishop Crosby for presiding at both events. Moving on to the first order of business, which is the land acknowledgement, opening prayer, national anthem, and oath of citizenship. I ask staff to please start us off with the land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe,
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect 4 directions:
lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair, we cannot hear you.
Trustee O'Brien, can you hear?
I can now, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Boy, could you please lead us in the opening prayer, national anthem, and the oath of citizenship?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and through you. Could everyone please join me in making the sign of our faith? In the name of the Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, as we are gathered here today, help us to nurture a sense of leadership and responsibility that helps us further your work in your name. Help us to nurture your kingdom through the building of a prosperous Catholic community within the HCDSB, and help us to ensure that we make decisions in light of your compassion, love, and mercy for all. Amen.
From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God give our land, glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada and fulfill my duties. Moving on to we do not have motions adopted in camera, and we do not have information received in camera. Next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda? Trustee Carabella, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a notice of motion and I have 2 points of clarification I wanted to ask about.
Trustee Carabella, can you specify, read the title of your notice of motion?
Okay, so it is upholding the sanctity of life in fundraising services at the Halton Catholic District School Board - contraception.
So your title is upholding the sanctity of life at HCDSB - contraception.
Upholding the sanctity of life in fundraising services at the Halton Catholic District School Board - contraception.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. That will be item 10.4 under item. Next question.
10.5.
Okay. 10.5. Sorry, my mistake. What's your clarification question?
And the 2 questions I have, one is regarding the report that was supposed to be due today for the school liaison officer, and it wasn't included on the agenda, and it's still in the what's that section called? Business arriving from previous meetings. So I'm wondering what the status is for that.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sorry, Trustee Guzzo.
My point of order is that this is only the agenda, approval of the agenda. This isn't a time to ask questions.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Your point is well taken. I was going to answer Trustee Carabella that we will get down to the items that are pending, and we can discuss it over there, Trustee Carabella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my other point of clarification was regarding a delegation that was submitted late. It only appeared in today's agenda. So if that could be explained, and if she fulfilled the our policy. Thank you.
That is delegation.
5.3, delegation 5.3.
Delegation was received on time. A request was put on time. It was received on time. There was some clarification required by the chair. The chair sought the clarification, and a few modifications were done, and the chair accepted the delegation. And I believe you were informed, Trustee Carabella, about that too.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Carabella. So Trustee Guzzo, you have a point of order.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we're debating items on the agenda or having discussion around this. This is simply the approval of the revised agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Your point is taken. We shall move on to the approval of the agenda. Trustee De Rosa, do you have any item to be added to the agenda or deleted from the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that clarification. I would like the deletion of item 8.2 from the agenda on the grounds that no information has been provided and that I am concerned that this be an in-camera item rather than a public item. So for those two reasons, I would like, I will not be able to approve the agenda with this item on it. Thank you.
Or move to delete item 8.2 from the agenda. That requires a vote. So I'll need a mover and a seconder.
I will move.
I will second.
So to clarify, Trustee De Rosa, this is not an in-camera item. So I have your point of view, but let me check with the parliamentarian.
Mr. Chair.
I've been advised by the parliamentarian that to delete an item requires a majority, number one. Number two, when we get to that item, we can deal with that item right away. So
I would like a vote. I would like a vote, Mr. Chair.
Delete item 8 from the agenda. Rosa, looking for a seconder.
Carabella.
Trustee seconds. Now take it to a recorded vote. Trustee Uhanchanada. Trustee Guzzo.
Opposed.
Vice Chair Agnew.
Opposed.
Trustee Murphy. Opposed. Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
You said you're in favor?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
De Rosa.
I'm in favor, Mr. Chair.
Carabella.
I'm in favor of deleting. Yeah.
Trustee Bowie.
Opposed.
Trustee Mastrihammer.
Opposed.
Trustee Tokiwa.
Opposed.
And Trustee Duarte is opposed. We have 3 in favor. We have 5 opposed. The deletion does not happen. The motion fails. We shall continue with the approval of the agenda as it stands right now.
Oh, sorry. I have a question. Let me put up my hand there.
Trustee Carabella, you have any item to the agenda, add, delete, or amend?
I'd like to know what name is beside item 8.2, Code of Conduct.
There is no name, Trustee Carabella. We will get to it and then with
A surprise?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Guzzo.
I'm not sure how many times I have to point of order that we're not supposed to be debating agenda items. It's approval of the agenda, and if there's any additions or corrections, and that's not what's happening. Can we please get this meeting going?
I did specify that to Trustee Carabella too. So we shall move on to the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, will you grant it, please?
Trustee De Rosa, do you have any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
That's exactly what we are doing, Mr. Chair. We're not debating anything. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee De Rosa. Thank you, trustees. We shall now move on to the approval of the agenda. I do not see any other hands up, so I shall go to a recorded vote. Trustee Guzzo. Oh, sorry. I need to ask for a mover and a seconder before we get. Trustee Ohan Chanata moves. Looking for a seconder, please.
I'll second, Trustee Guzzo.
Guzzo seconds. Trustee Guzzo, how do you vote?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew? Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
Opposed.
Trustee DeRosa?
Opposed.
Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
In favor.
Trustee Ohonchanada?
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair. I can't hear Trustee O'Hearn Sonoda.
Trustee Ohonchanada in favor. And Trustee Duarte is in favor. We have 4 in favor and we have 4 opposed. So the agenda fails. Let me talk to the parliamentarian and get back. So trustees, this is where we stand right now. The agenda is defeated. We do not have an agenda for tonight. The option is for a trustee to propose a different agenda or a change to the agenda, which we can table up again. Any trustees will proceed?
Mr. Chair, I would propose an agenda. I'd propose an agenda minus the notice of motion that deals with contraception.
Okay, Trustee Guzzo, 1 second, let me consult parliamentarian again, hold on. Okay, so Trustee Guzzo, I have, based on the information and opinion I have from Parliamentarian Kapoor, is that we cannot take the right of a trustee to put a notice of motion on the floor. As such, your amendment to your agenda is not in order.
Okay. I guess we're gonna have some problems then. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Trustee Murphy, do you want to propose a different agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I propose we remove item 8.2 from the agenda.
I will second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy. We have a new agenda being proposed. Item 8.2 is being deleted. We have it moved by Trustee Murphy, seconded by Trustee O'Brien. I shall now take it to a recorded vote. Vice Chair Agnew? Opposed. Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
DeRosa?
Mr. Chair, can you come back to me, please?
Sure. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
Trustee Ohonchanada? Trustee Guzzo?
Opposed.
Trustee DeRosa?
I'm in favor.
We have 6 in favor, 2 opposed. The agenda carries. We shall delete item 8.2 from the agenda. Give me a second.
Mr. Chair, can I have a point of privilege? Or a clarification?
So state your point of privilege, please?
So, when I proposed the first agenda, that was taking, that I couldn't oppose having the notice of motion on, yet the code of conduct was brought forward by another trustee, and we've just voted to take that off of the agenda. Isn't that essentially the same?
Trustee Guzzo, that's not a point of privilege.
Or said, or clarification is what I said, Mr. Chair. So I said both.
Let me clarify this with the parliamentarian, because I went with the opinion of the parliamentarian, so I'll seek clarification too. Trustee Guzzo, so the code of conduct is in our bylaws, and I understand that there is no timeline put to that, whereas the trustees' right to put a notice of motion exists in our bylaws, and whatever notice of motion is put in this meeting comes to the next meeting. So that's the difference, Trustee Guzzo. So we shall now move on to the next item on the agenda, and the next order of business is the declaration of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest at this point in time? Trustee DeRosa, you have your hand up. Trustee DeRosa, do you have your hand up for declarations of conflict of interest?
No, Mr. Chair, that was a remnant of the previous discussion, so I will cede. I have no conflict of interest.
Okay.
I'm trying to take out to lower my hand, Mr. Chair.
Please don't put your hand off. The boardroom will take your hand off. So Trustee O'Brien, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, item 10.2, budget estimates. Among the many things, this item deals with staffing. My wife is an occasional teacher, therefore I will be declaring a conflict of interest.
Brian, 10.2, I'll remember when we get there. Okay, seeing no other conflict of interest, we shall move on down to the next order of business, which is presentations. Superintendent Del Sordo, please introduce the presentations.
Thank you and good evening, Chair. The Thomas Mertens Center for Adult and Continuing Education is a branch of the Halton Catholic District School Board that serves to provide pathway destination for adult learners, new Canadians, offering international and Indigenous languages, as well as credit and non-credit courses. There are many unique programs offered to support our learners and language learners and summer students and summer school students, so that we as a system can best change the trajectory of learners' lives and best equip them with the skills, knowledge that speaks to their passions and interest. All of this is made possible because of the caring, compassionate, and the brilliant leadership of Principal Dr. Montanari, Vice Principals Sonia Allison, and Dave Grace, alongside a compassionate and caring staff. I'd like to welcome Dr. Montanari to give us an update on the Thomas Mertens Center for Adult and Continuing Education.
Thank you, Superintendent Del Sordo. Good evening, school board trustees and senior administration of the Halton Catholic District School Board. My name is Gino Montanari, and I am the proud principal here at Thomas Merton. Tonight, we would like to provide a brief but important presentation about our programs at Thomas Merton and the impact they have on our students and clients. Can you move to the next slide, please? Slide 2. Thank you. We've provided each school board trustee with a promotional bag with information on the various programs we offer. please avail yourself to them to your further reading. And should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Every year, just under 10,000 students come through our doors at our Milton, Oakville, and Burlington locations. We offer 7 credit-bearing programs and 9 non-credit. All our students and clients come voluntarily to Thomas Merton to attain their individual educational goal. Slide 3, please. Credit programs, as you can see, we have 7 unique ones that have been listed in the table above in your package. Students come to our programs with diverse backgrounds and experiences. With the support of our guidance staff, we assist all students in their ultimate quest of obtaining a high school diploma or in obtaining prerequisite programs for post-secondary or other pathways. Many of our credit students have also been enrolled in our non-credit programs, forming a perfect symbiotic relationship between both systems and streams. At this point, I'd like to introduce one of our students, our former students, with her perspective on Thomas Merton. Please welcome Deborah.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So my Merton experience goes much deeper than what I have written. And for 13 years, I was a stay-at-home mom while my husband worked in the United States. And when we returned to Canada, I ended up getting a job as a night replenisher at a local retailer. But after 3 months, I realized that I couldn't stay there till I retired, and I didn't know what to do. So I thought, okay, you know what? I would like to go back to school. And I went and I spoke to Corey in the guidance office at here at Thomas Merton. And Corey met with me and she asked me a few key questions. And one of them were what my end goal was and how fast I wanted to get there. I took the slow route, which led me through PLAR, then grade 11 and 12 applied English. Then after that, I went on to do 11 and 12 academic English, and I also did a few other courses as well, all to get me as a mature student into Ryerson. So the beauty of here, and like I said, I cannot begin to tell you the magnitude of what this meant for me and my life and changing my life. I was able to attend full-time school as well as work full-time. So I was able to take care of my family with a full-time paycheck and get the 7 credits I needed to get into university, which I feel is so monumental. So I applied at Ryerson University and I was accepted. I have since finished my undergrad in urban planning, and I am now in the spatial analysis program, also at Ryerson. And I know that the courses I took here at Thomas Merton prepared me for my academic journey. And these courses are still carrying me through to today. And I am just so grateful for the staff and the teachers here. And I feel that there are so many people in this area that can be that can end up feeling the way I do, because I think it's so important for, it doesn't matter what age you are. And, you know, I was older and I came here and I got an education. I went to Ryerson, I got an education, and the teachers here taught me that I can do it. They were just supportive of me, and I'm just so grateful. And I just wish that I can be a poster child for you guys, so I can tell people this is the place to be, because I know that Without my education here, I would not be where I am. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Deborah, for that. At this point, I'd like to advance to the next slide for our next speaker. Andrea Basich is our Manager of Language Instruction for Newcomers, ESL, FSL, and the Welcome Center.
Good evening, everyone. With the wraparound service approach, our language and settlement program aims to address a full range of newcomer needs, empowering them to become fully engaged and integrated in the Halton community. When a newcomer family arrives here, they are welcomed by our settlement team and provided a needs assessment, settlement plan, information and referral. Their children are assessed and registered in our schools, and then our language team books assessment and adults are placed in our core or workplace language training. Families fleeing war or families who are dealing with any settlement-related stress are seen by our crisis counselor and given the resources to cope with challenges. Our multilingual team understands the challenges that immigrants face while adjusting to life in Canada. Collectively, we focus on immigrants who face many challenges while adjusting to life in Canada. Our team last year has provided services to 782 newcomers. To be able to serve even more newcomers, we have secured both provincial and federal funding for our language programs. Some of our core ESL and link classes are co-funded, and therefore we have the opportunity to serve a broad range of newcomers, including permanent residents, refugee claimants, and naturalized Canadian citizens. Our employment-based courses offer the introductory job-relevant terminology as well as essential skills which enable learners to actively participate in their workplace. In 2021 and 22, we served 311 learners in LINK program, 734 learners in ESL, and 201 learners in the FSL program. Our learners come from all over the world, but these are the 3 top countries of their origin: China, Iraq, and Syria. Recently, we have seen an influx of Ukrainian families, and so we partnered with Ukrainian churches in Oakville and Burlington, as well as other nonprofit organizations to be able to provide efficient community support to these families. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to introduce Helen O'Brien, our Supervisor of Literacy and Basic Skills. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Helen O'Brien, Supervisor LBS. We're part of a network in Peel Halton, and we're contracted with the Ministry of Labour, Training and Skills Development to serve 93 students each year. We work with adults aged 19 and up, and we've been in business for 30 years. We offer a starting point for individuals wishing to continue their education by removing barriers and providing equitable access for all. Currently, there are 2 parts to the programme. First, the GROW programme. This is a pre-employment course for community living clients, which culminates in an adult co-op placement supported by our co-op teachers and the supported employment staff of community living, with a goal of permanent employment. Thomas Merton is the sole dedicated provider in the region for this community. Then we have the academic upgrading classes, which prepares students primarily for entry to credit courses, for apprenticeship, and at times post-secondary. Last year, for example, of 31 who exited the program, 25 progressed to credit classes. We can talk about success in these terms, but what I want to stress really is that success is often seen in the life-changing effects that the program has. And a big reason for this is the one-stop shop of services at Thomas Merton. Students benefit from a range of programs without ever leaving the building. And this week, for instance, one student actually described it as legendary. So with that, I'd like to introduce Cecilia, who's living proof of all this. And she's here now to talk a little bit about it from a student's perspective. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I was a student in this program for a number of years because I worked full-time. When I came, there was no judgment about age. It's a safe space. I arrived with about a grade 5 reading level. I always knew I had to go back to school, so I started with upgrading before I could move on. I was the valedictorian for this program. Next, I went to PLAW class. Then I got a credit with independent studies and earned co-op credits. All of this in spite of my learning disability. And now I am running my 2 businesses. I have to tell you, my high school diploma, this piece of paper means everything to me. I am very humbled and thankful for the teachers at Thomas Merton that make this program work. I would be very happy to meet with any one of you to share more about Thomas Merton and what it has done for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. And at this point, I'd like to introduce our final guest speaker, Eugenia Nawas, our Manager of International and Indigenous Language Elementary.
Good evening, everybody. The International Indigenous Languages Elementary Program, previously known as Heritage Languages, is mandated by the Ministry of Education. The ILE program aims to develop our young learners' ability to use the language of their home or heritage, as well as learn a new language. They learn about the culture and heritage associated with the language in a safe and inclusive environment. During COVID, we supported our ILE families with classes hosted online. We are returning to in-class delivery starting this summer, in addition to online, accommodating all our ILE learners. In the current 2021-2022 school year, we are running with 20 languages in 107 classes with over than 2,600 students. We are looking forward to summer 2022. To best serve our communities, our ILE family continues to grow, and we are proud to welcome 3 new languages this year. 2 from Nigeria, Yoruba language running with 9 classes. This year, 2 Igbo classes, 3 Igbo classes, and 1 Korean. In times of need, we are proud to show our solidarity as we welcome new Ukrainian students to join our ILE Ukrainian family, allowing them to connect with the new friends and experience the Canadian educational system through a familiar setting and language they grew up with. Finally, ILE bridges our young learners with the global community. And most importantly, our students feel more included in their schools when they see their identity reflected in school programs. Looking forward to seeing you at our ILE cultural events and celebrations. Next slide, please. Thank you. And I introduce Gino back again to the stage.
That is all our presentation. I'm not sure if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Montanari. I shall now open up the floor to trustees for questions. Trustee De Rosa, I see your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Mr. Montanari, I just want to congratulate you for the fine presentation and the work that you do. Very simply. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Trustee De Rosa, Vice Chair Agnew, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and through you, Mr. Chair. Also, just a comment. We often will hear about these programs that are happening throughout our system here at the board table, or we see them through social media or in other ways. But to actually hear from
participants in your program to actually hear their stories about the successes they've had, the support that these programs provide to them, the way they've been able to change their lives, the way they've been able to, achieve their dreams and meet their goals. Is just such a strong testament to everything that you and your team are doing there. I learn something new every time we see presentations like this, and just the magnitude of the programs and services that you're offering to so many different participants is truly outstanding. So thank you very much. Keep those good stories coming. I'd love to hear more, and continue the great work. And I know you're so proud, but you should be so proud of yourselves, your staff, and your students that are there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
On the speakers list, we have Trustee Murphy, Trustee Ohonchanada. Trustee Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Principal Montanari. Very inspiring. We had the good fortune of touring your facility in Milton, which was beautiful, and we spent some time, and I was quite impressed with the passion, compassion, and empathy that your whole team brings in changing lives, and really allowing your students to lead dignified lives. So thank you for all you do. So a question I have is how can we support you in your good work?
That's a very good question. It probably would require a lot of time to go over. The one thing that the purpose of this evening was to gain some recognition of the work that we do, that we are one of the unique pieces of the board. And as such, we can't always be seen in the same light as our day school counterparts, just because of the diversity that we provide. So a recognition and understanding that sometimes the way in which we compare to our day schools, it may not be appropriate to properly serve our clients and our students, and any support that can help us in that direction would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy. Do you have any follow-up?
No, it was good. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Ohonchanada, you have the floor.
I can't hear her.
Ohonchanada, you want to use another mic, please?
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
I just really want, I'll be very quick in the of time. I just really wanted to say I had the pleasure of being able to visit as well with Trustee Murphy and Chair Duarte, and you can feel the passion, as Trustee Murphy indicated, and the amount of emotion that's in what you all do there. And it's obviously producing wonderful results, and good for you. And we're very proud of you. And like Trustee Murphy said, if you need something, you come talk to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for what you do, everyone.
I will take you up on that. Thank you.
I know you.
On the speakers list, we have Trustee Carabella. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, just to say bravo, Principal Montanari, to you and your students and your team. And thank you so much for your service. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any hands up. So Principal Montanari and staff, thank you so much for your dedication and hard work. Thank you for coming and presenting to the board. Your work is really, really, really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Best
evening.
Moving on to the next item, next presentation by Trustee Mastriamer. Trustee Mastriamer, you have the floor for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just turn my... So I'll be doing a presentation today surrounding the elementary school visits that I was fortunate to do. Next slide.
Thank you. So just an overview of my visits. So they were on May 11th and 12th. I visited Sacred Heart of Jesus Catholic Elementary School, St. Anne's Catholic Elementary School, and St. Christopher Catholic Elementary School. I met with amazing student leaders and asked them questions, and they asked me some questions as well. And I spoke to students in grade 7s and 8s, and it was just a great way for them to know about my role and meet who I am, and also for me to hear about what they think that we're doing and what's working for them and not. I just wanted to bring some awareness around the student trustee role because I realized that elementary students don't know much about my role and what we do here at the board. Asked for feedback from elementary students regarding the past initiatives student trustees have done, something that they want to see again next year, just some feedback, and learn about the amazing work elementary students are doing at their school levels, because I realized early on that we hear a lot about secondary schools from our feedback, and I wanted to hear some of our elementary students because I realized that they bring a completely different perspective to the ideas that we have, and they see things with a completely different point of view and see some challenges that we may face in the future that we might not see. Next slide, please. So some of the feedback we got. So elementary students feel that there is a need for more mental health resources at their school level. And this was really eye-opening for me because we're always advocating for mental health resources. And I realized that in secondary schools, that looks very different than elementary schools. And they just wanted to bring more awareness surrounding that. Increased connections that need to be built between the high schools and elementary schools. So something that we talked a lot about was that gap between the elementary and high school, how leaders we can start connecting them with things like our student senate from their elementary level. That way, when they get to high school, they know people around them and they feel comfortable when they get there. Increase in awareness and support for our Indigenous students and to us LGBTQ+ communities. Students love learning and listening to other students that in older grades. So something that was really cool was for them to tell me that, you know what, sometimes we want to hear like how high school's going for students in grade 10 and 11, what their favorite courses are, what they like, what they didn't like, some of like the pros and cons of some courses, because a lot of the time it's teachers talking to them about it and they like to hear from like a perspective from a student that's doing it right now. And next slide, please. Something really big was also community. Elementary students found that after the COVID-19 lockdown, there was a lack of community feel in their schools. We discussed some ways that we can bring these back to, for example, like reading buddies, Christmas concerts, high school students visiting and telling them more about their school experience, spirit days that have a true meaning. A lot of, one student in particular told me that Orange Shirt Day is great and all, but they would like to see more awareness surrounding Indigenous culture and just other things that don't specifically have to do with residential schools, just bring more awareness about everything that's going on, even in our time today. And next slide, please, I believe. That's the last one. Oh, so some questions I received a lot of questions about how I balance my life between being a student trustee, what a student trustee is, what is our student senate, my favorite and least favorite parts of being a student trustee, where I'm headed next year. A lot of questions about curriculum and courses they can take next year. Just general high school questions like how to get involved, the difference between like student council and student senate, which is something that we need to bring a lot more awareness about, and how I decided to become a student trustee and how I decided to vote in our meetings. So that was something really cool that we talked about. And it's just some pictures that I would like to share with you guys about my visits. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has them.
Trustee Masterhammer. Well done. We have a question speaker here. Trustee Guzzo, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Masri Amar, thank you so much for actually meeting with our younger students and being a leader and a true leader and showing them what it's like and giving them that insight. I think it's so important, and I hope that it gets carried on next year. Really just an ingenious thing for you to do. It would be great to see other schools, maybe, I don't know, in your final rounds, maybe there's a few more schools you can reach out to, because I think it is really important for students to know, especially before they enter into grade 9, to kind of get that mindset in, to know what voice they can have in their school and that they do have a voice, right? And to kind of look for it right on the onset. So thank you. thank you for doing that, and thank you for including all of our students, and thank you for, considering going out to more schools as well.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Vice Chair Agnew, you have the floor.
Very much through you, Mr. Chair. Just another thank you. We chatted a little bit yesterday. We were together at the Blessing at St. Nicholas, and I think it's a fantastic idea. Thank you for doing it. I think it's amazing that students get to hear about your role as a student trustee, what it is that you're doing. I think that's probably a foreign concept for some of our students that are out there, and so just to get the wheels thinking for them, that there are these opportunities, that there are things like the Senate, all of those things that again, just get them thinking about options and opportunities for them, and just giving them the chance to use their voice, share some feedback with you. This is great stuff you brought forward to us. So thanks so much for doing that. And I did see your post on social media. You look like you were having a blast. You can tell how excited you are about it right now. So thanks so much for doing that. I think it had a huge impact.
Thank you, Vice Chair Agnew. Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was at St. Nicholas for the celebrations. There were some last minute changes that took place, and I would say last minute changes. I didn't get an opportunity to thank Trustee Bowie for stepping up to the challenge of being able to fill in for an MC. And I want to congratulate her, and I'm glad I'm getting to do it publicly. Congratulate her for doing remaining cool and doing a great job. So good for you. That's a good lesson for life. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mastriammer, I just want to thank you for going to our schools and being a source of inspiration for young kids. Thank you, really appreciate it. Moving on to the next order of business, which is delegations. Tonight, we have 4 delegations. Our delegates are on the line, and I will let them know when to begin. Since we have several delegations tonight, I would like to explain the ground rules as per policy I-06 and hope we all understand and follow them. Delegates will have precisely 10 minutes to present. There will be an alarm at 9 minutes, and at the 10-minute mark, you will end your presentation. After the presentation, trustees will have 3 minutes to ask 2 clarifying questions that includes responses based on the presentation only. Presenters are expected to maintain a level of decorum. The chair shall act as a moderator for each delegation presentation and will govern the questions from the Board of Trustees. Trustees, you do not need to thank the delegates, rather get to your questions directly. The chair will thank all delegates on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Item 5.1, we have 1 delegation which was declined tonight, and trustees have been informed about it as it did not meet the request deadline. Moving on to the next item under delegations, item 5.2, sanctity of life. From the Halton Parents for Change. Our first delegation this evening is from Halton Parents for Change. Give me a minute and we'll have the timer started. Ready to start? Okay, your time starts now. Go ahead.
Good evening, trustees, staff, and Director Daly. We will be brief tonight. The subject motion needs little discussion. To ban fundraising for all the worthy causes that this would encompass is very clearly not what the community wants. Trustee Carabella's attempt to raise the Sanctity of Life fundraising ban once again is quite simply a waste of time, resources, and undermines the entirety of HCDSB and the will its stakeholders have clearly expressed.
We have been down this road many times. 4 years ago, this topic dragged HCDSB through the mud, resulted in millions of dollars of fundraising being lost, and as we know, eventually led to the ban being overturned. Most current trustees stated their opposition to the content of this motion in their election platforms. Secondary students staged a walkout, and this group already voted on this earlier this year when Trustee Carabella tried to push it through via the fundraising policy review. Despite dozens of delegations and hours of debate, certain trustees seem bent on imposing this policy on a community that has told you repeatedly that they do not want it.
Bringing up this ban again tonight as a separate motion is a gross and negligent waste of the time of every individual around our board table, our parliamentarian, the entirety of our staff, our other guests, and our families, stakeholders, and ratepayers watching at home. This delegation itself is a waste of our time. To the rest of the trustees, please vote against this damaging, harmful, disrespectful, wasteful, and unnecessarily divisive motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Trustees may now ask 2 questions each for clarification, and I'm looking at the speakers list. We do not have any questions from trustees. So once again, I would like to thank you for coming and presenting to the Board of Trustees. Our delegation will be dealt with under agenda item 8.1. Moving on to the next delegation, and that's on sanctity of life. The second delegation is from Alexandra Bauer and Reverend. You also have 10 minutes for your presentation. Give me a second and I'll let you know when to start. Please proceed. You can start. Your time starts now.
Okay, good evening. I am here with Reverend Michael Corin, ordained priest and scholar, to present tonight on the motion Sanctity of Life as tabled by Helena Carabella. My name is Alex Power, but most of you know that. What you do not know is who I am. I am a mother to 3 amazing children. I am also a mother to a fetus that aborted at 8 weeks as it decided to not inhabit my uterus, but instead somewhere outside, a place the doctors could not find. A mother that was terrified that a bundle of cells, which were potentially meant to grow into a baby, could kill me and leave my 2 other children motherless. A mother that is beyond grateful for the advances of science and medicine that said that my life was worthy and would intervene to ensure that this bundle of cells was not the end of my story. I am also a friend. I'm a friend to amazing mothers and fathers who longed for children of their own, who utilized the advancements of science and technology to hold their beautiful children in their arms, a technology that requires, quite often, an over-fertilization of eggs and at times a selective reduction of pregnancy to ensure the fetuses with the most potential to survive the tumultuous 9 months of intrauterine growth have a chance at life. I am also an aunt to 16 beautiful nieces and nephews, 2 of whom are not on this earth anymore. One of these children, my nephew Gavin, offered me the supreme privilege of holding his hand as he looked into the light and passed out of this world. I fought alongside Gavin while he struggled with rounds and rounds of chemotherapy, 2 bone marrow transplants, and more pricks and pokes than most of you can even fathom. His cancer was rare, and his survival for 5 years was the direct result of the research and expertise of both McMaster Children's Hospital and Sick Kids Hospital. I am also a physician and a scientist. I've dedicated over half of my life to understanding pathology and treatment. I've caught babies as they entered this world, and I held hands as others exited. I've experienced through the lives of my patients so many different human conditions. That does not give me expertise, but it does give me insight. Why am I sharing this? Because I want you to see the multitude of lenses that I am applying when I sit down and read Ms. Carabella's motion, which is being tabled yet again despite a clear message from the HCDS community that it is against our wishes. Ms. Carabella's motion stems on the premise that life begins at conception and that the church does not support abortion and consequently embryonic stem cell research. There are many faults to this argument, and I will leave the religious ones to the esteemed reverend, but I will begin by contributing some basic scientific understanding. When an egg is penetrated by a sperm, this is considered conception. However, this feat occurs in most cases in the fallopian tube. It then takes 3 to 5 days for that zygote to travel to the uterus. The cells of the zygote continue to multiply until they reach the uterus, at which time it becomes a hollow ball of cells called a blastocyte. It is the blastocyte that then embeds into the uterine lining. When we are referring to embryonic stem cell research, as Ms. Carabella does in her motion, we are referring to blastocyte cells. Now, let's consider a woman's reproductive process. It is an accepted fact that up to 20% of pregnancies result in miscarriage, most often in the first trimester. In fact, it is assumed that up to 50% of pregnancies likely result in miscarriage, many happening before a woman is aware she is pregnant. That brings forth a cognitive complexity. If life begins at conception and up to 50% of these pregnancies self-abort, then what is the conclusion? If God truly believes that life begins the moment a sperm penetrates an egg, and yet he allows 50% of these lives to be lost, does he not believe in their own perfection? Or can we use the simple answer as science has explained? Most frequently, these pregnancies abort because there are chromosomal errors that occur and the fetus would not be viable. But what of women, like myself, where the zygote didn't go the intended path? At what point, according to Ms. Carabella and her motion, does my life begin to hold value? Because an ectopic pregnancy cannot ever be reimplanted, as some right-wing media would have you believe. So for physicians and mothers, there's only one choice: the life of the mother or her death. There is no potential for life for this zygote. That chance ceased to exist when nature took the wrong turn. Consequently, any hospital treating women must provide abortion services to preserve the life of the mother. Embryonic stem cell research utilizes cells that are taken from the blastocyte. The first of these cell lines were taken from pre-implanted IVF blastocytes after a process of informed consent. Again, the cognitive dissonance within this motion makes my mind pretzel. The parents and owners of these blastocytes provided them via informed consent. As per the multitude of unsolicited emails from Ms. Carabella, when it comes to masking and vaccination, she seems to feel very strongly about parental rights in making choices for their children. This motion directly contradicts that view. There are many other reasons, many more than can be listed here today, why a physician and a woman may choose to abort a pregnancy. Quoting a book from thousands of years ago in defense of stopping support for all organizations that perform abortion suggests that all progress should be paused in the first century. You and I both know this is ludicrous. Who amongst us has not had a family member suffer from cancer or knows somebody fighting a chronic disease? How do you think these treatments and therapies came to exist? It happened because of the dedicated research of people much more intelligent than all of us here. And yet, Ms. Carabella wants to handicap these researchers. The direct impact of this motion is preventable death. For your wife, daughter, mother to die of breast cancer because a trustee hasn't interpreted a book written centuries ago as opposing abortion, a concept that did not exist at the time. She wants to bring us back to the dark ages of plagues and smallpox because, again, she opposes researchers who develop vaccines to cure a multitude of illnesses. Where do you think this research happens, except at the same hospitals and research institutions that she is on a personal vendetta to defund and expunge? At this point, I am meant to hand it over to Reverend Cohen, but unfortunately, he was unable to join tonight, so I'll be sharing his thoughts this evening. There is nothing Christian about allowing a woman to die in an illegal backstreet abortion. Nothing Christian about removing the basic right of a woman to control her body. Nothing Christian about wanting to criminalize females' equality. This needs to be emphasized at this time, partly because, as it's just been leaked, that the US Supreme Court has provisionally voted to overturn Roe v. Wade, the iconic 1973 ruling that legalized abortion, but also because there's a wave of radicalism in Canada seemingly determined to roll back the clock and deny women their basic rights. There's a chapter in my last book, The Rebel Christ, entitled Life Begins at Being Really, Really, Really Angry About Abortion. And while I realize that the optics scream otherwise, please know that the war on women's reproductive choice isn't at all Christian. Until relatively recently, the evangelical church had a far more nuanced and moderate position on the issue. As late as 1971, the Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Protestant church in North America, voted to work for legislation that will allow the possibility of abortion under such conditions as rape, incest, clear evidence of severe fetal deformity, and carefully ascertained evidence of the likelihood of damage to the emotional, mental, and physical health of the mother. In 1968, Christianity Today, the most influential magazine in the evangelical world, stated that abortion had always been considered in light of the individual health, family welfare, and social responsibility. Both positions would be considered hearsay today. The Roman Catholic Church has been more consistently opposed to abortion, but also objects to birth control, divorce, and women's ordination. With all due respect, it's difficult to regard this anachronistically patriarchal institution that was so slow and reluctant to admit systemic sexual abuse of children as a qualified commentator on the subject. But what of Scripture itself? The central point is that any ancient text, even one that is central to a religious faith, and certainly crucial to my life and beliefs, has to be understood and interpreted in context and with understanding. So, for example, when opponents of abortions quote Jeremiah, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations." They should grasp a few realities. First, this was written around 2,700 years ago. Second, the text is speaking more of a single person, a prophet to the nations, rather than making a sweeping comment about the beginning of life. Or Psalm 139, "For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." This is poetry and a metaphor, a beautiful testimony to God's love, but not a guide to human biology. The very idea is unbiblical. The New Testament has Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, meeting Mary, mother of Jesus, and the child leaped in her womb. Again, a lyrical description of an event that shaped history, but not scientific and not supposed to be. If we're to take our literalist approach to the Bible, we're in all sorts of trouble. By the way, it sometimes supports abortion, something the Christian right doesn't like to mention. What does run through Scripture if we read it through the light-filled prism of gospel love and empathy is care for the marginalized and powerless, and it's poor and racialized women in particular who will suffer if the extremists have their way. This isn't about life and never has been. It's about control of women, freedom, and progress. As a Christian, I know where I have to stand. The same applies to most faiths. Judaism and Islam, as well as Christianity, have traditionally taught that life begins not at conception, but at the first breath, and most other religions embrace this as well. Let's not let ultra-conservative ideologies disguise themselves as faith or a war on women. We are a cloak of religion and righteousness. Reproductive choice is too important for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Trustee, 2 questions, each for clarification purposes only. Trustee Uzo, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Power, for your presentation and for sharing with us. Just out of curiosity, do you know that do we teach do we promote or do anything about abortion within our schools that you're aware of?
No, as far as I'm aware, obviously I don't have control over the curriculum, but this is not something that falls whatsoever under the HCDSB mandate or the board having control over, whether it be women's reproductive rights, whether it be abortion, and whether it be contraception, which I believe will be coming up this evening, unfortunately, as well. This really does not fall anywhere under the HCDSB mandate. And that's why I question why we are speaking about it and wasting precious board time.
Trustee, you have a follow-up? You have a minute more?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Dr. Powers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Guzzo. I do not see any trustee's hand up. Since I see no other hand up, I want to thank you for your presentation. Thank you for coming to talk to trustees of the board. Response to the delegation will be dealt with under agenda item 8.1. Thank you. Moving on to the next delegation. Again, it's on sanctity of life. This delegation is from Catherine Brzezinski. Do we have Catherine Brzezinski online?
Hello. Good evening. I would like to share my views on Trustee Carabella's motion, the sanctity of life, and why this is very personal for me. Trigger warning.
Hold on.
Sure.
Sorry, give me a second. We need to reset. Thank you. We can start now. Go ahead.
Do you want me to start over?
Please.
Pardon?
Yes, please.
Good evening. I would like to share my views on Trustee Carabella's motion, the sanctity of life, and why this is very personal for me. Trigger warning, death. On Thanksgiving 1999, I walked with my grandmother to our local bakery, as we often did when I visited. This time, she shared with me some devastating news. My father had cancer, and the tumor was the size of a fist. I was just a teenager, and the full impact of this didn't hit me yet. Over the next few weeks and months, I watched as my father slowly faded into a thinner, paler version of himself. On January 9th, 2000, just days after Y2K, he passed away. I was shattered. The full impact of this loss didn't really hit me until I walked up to his coffin the day of his funeral. When I saw him lying there motionless, I realized how final this was. I was absolutely crushed. I lost my father to cancer. A couple of years ago, my teenage nephew was diagnosed with cancer. After several treatments, he was cleared and is doing much better now. With continued monitoring, he has the ability to live a fulfilling and healthy life. I'm sure many of you have a friend or relative who has or had cancer. Many of you know how difficult it is to have someone we love suffer from this disease. Preventing our fundraising dollars from going towards cancer and other medical research is essentially turning away from all those suffering with illness and their families. This is the opposite of what it means to be a Christian. In the Bible, we hear many stories of Jesus healing the sick. Today, we rely on medicine and science to heal. As Christians, we should be following Jesus's example and helping others. In this case, helping others is supporting cancer and other medical research in hopes that it cures more people. Should this not be our mandate? To help others by supporting their healing? Wouldn't Jesus do the same? We should do our part in supporting medical research as a school community. These types of motions and ways of thinking are not pro-Christian. They are simply anti-science, and there's no room for this in any kind of educational institution. We are a school first. In fact, 4 years ago, when a similar motion was pushed through, I was so upset, I was ready to pull my children out of this board and put them in the public board. I was so relieved when it was overturned, and it was because of that incident that I began to pay more attention to our board. It is incredibly frustrating as a parent and as a relative of a cancer survivor, cancer victim, that this motion was put forward again. I ask that the trustees consider how damaging this motion is and vote against it. Further to this, it seems this motion has a political bias that goes beyond education and, in my opinion, falls outside of what the school board should be mandating. Although the motion put forward was about eliminating our fundraising support to specific medical institutions, it seems there are political undertones that are anti-woman and anti-choice, and this needs to stop. The right to a safe abortion is necessary and should not be interfered with. Abortions are safe medical procedures, and they can and do save lives. We cannot take this medical choice away from individuals with a womb. Let them decide what is right for their bodies. We need to protect this medical procedure, protect women's rights, their bodily autonomy, their choice. In closing, I again request that trustees please vote against this motion. Let's show the community that we support science and medicine and that we are doing our part in finding cures and healing people. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brzezinski. Trustees may now ask 2 questions, each for clarifications purposes only. Trustees, do we have questions for delegate? Seeing none, I would like to thank you very much for coming and talking to trustees today. Response to the delegation will be dealt with under agenda item 8.1. Thank you. We shall now move on to our final delegation for this evening. This delegation is from Kristen Kelly. Give me a second. Are you online, Kristen?
Yes, I'm here.
Give me a second and yeah, you're good to start. Your time starts now. Go ahead.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kirsten Kelly. I am a returning grade 12 student at Assumption Catholic Secondary School, a former student trustee, and a student senator in Halton Catholic. Tonight, I would like to provide my perspective on the Sanctity of Life motion as a student activist and why I am opposed to this as a student of the board and a follower of Christ. To start off, it would be an understatement to say that I'm shocked this policy amendment is being tabled. When the Sanctity of Life motion was passed in 2018, it was well known that many community members spoke out against this policy. Documents provided to trustees show that a majority of 74% opposed the policy change from a survey on the issue. There were parents expressing the lack of consultation from the board, there was condemnation from a former education minister on the policy, and there were student protests throughout numerous schools within the school board, all of which were done to voice out their concerns with this policy and have their remarks be heard in a way that the board would have no choice but to listen. As anecdotal evidence, I recall that I was one of these students. I had freshly started my first year in high school, and I was excited to be a part of a secondary school community that held many charitable events to do good in the world. A continuation of the ever so generous and giving Catholic school environment I was surrounded by in my elementary years. I was only to be met with disappointment when I heard about the Sanctity of Life motion. Among many students, I felt the need to walk out during my class time and education to join the student-wide protest on this matter. I felt the need to defend my school community during a time I should be investing in my education, all because I understood that this went against my values as a student and as a Catholic. The desire to help others in need is one of many things that schools have in common with our religious teachings. Our Catholic values call for us as children of God to put the needs of the vulnerable people first in our society, and our schools have done so by providing students with a sense of collaboration and community through events and fundraisers, including the Terry Fox Run and Jump Rope for Heart, events that would be halted by this policy. Teaching young people in schools aligns with God's teachings to care for one another. And through the Sanctity of Life policy, it would not only change the way students participate in fundraising, but would also teach children the wrong lessons. That one should only help the sick and vulnerable only if they follow the same set of values. And as a Catholic, I find this very way of thinking inappropriate. It contradicts Jesus' unconditional love and respect for all. And it calls for us to be exclusionary when we, as God's children, are not to decide which life means more than another life. Our Catholic community prides itself in its involvement in life-saving initiatives, and barring donations to those less fortunate through certain charities directly contradicts Catholic teaching. It is important to note that these are not isolated ideas that I hold, but it is the very stance that many students and community members hold. Regardless of the very vocal voices that have been expressing these very same values, this policy change continues to be pursued against the wishes of many. The board has a duty to uphold and serve the community, and yet it is focusing on the opinions of individuals rather than the greater community. The board must stop overstepping for the sake of personal positions, and it must be put aside in order to fulfill their role and serve the community that they were voted to represent. This policy has already caused lots of time to be wasted on the debate and should have already been resolved 4 years ago when it was overturned due to the outcry from numerous students and community members. Thus, the board should not further pursue this policy, for it contradicts values in the Catholic faith, for the damage it was caused to the social events of students' school communities, and for the voices that have already been very vocal about their opposition to this policy. Christ, our leader, has guided us to be non-discriminatory, and this includes how our Catholic community helps others. It is our God-given right as Catholic to have the free will to make the choice to help people and make a better place for those who call for our help in their moment of need and vulnerability. And I refuse to support a policy that would obstruct this and go against what I have been taught as a Catholic student. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I will now ask if there are questions for clarifications, and they can ask 2 questions in 3 minutes. So you have your hand up.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. So lovely to see you, Kirsten. Glad to have you back with us at the table. From your recollection, you mentioned in your delegation that when this was brought up the first time, that there was lots of concern raised by students. Would you say that if students were made aware again to the extent that they would have changed their mind in how they support this?
Just to clarify, did you mean as in like today, if they were aware of this being brought back on the table?
Yes, if students were aware that this was, and I'm sure some of them are aware, but do you think in 4 years that position has changed from what it was 4 years ago?
I don't think it would have changed at all. In fact, I probably think it would have been a stronger sentiment to this day, just because lots of students have had many perspectives brought in, and especially with the issue back then, a lot of students, such as myself, weren't even aware of board issues, and I was only aware after I heard about this. And being a freshman student, I became more involved with the board and learned more about it and about this issue itself as well. And I changed my perspective as a Catholic, and I continue to hold the stance that I do So that's why I'm coming out today as a student. And I believe a lot of my other fellow members, students, would hold the same stance as well and would walk out, protest, whatever means they would have to take to protest against this.
Thank you.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
You have 3 minutes and it's 30 seconds actually. Go ahead.
But I have 3 minutes, not the response. That doesn't include the response, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, do you recall 4 years ago when it was brought, because you are obviously, you mentioned it in your delegation, just to clarify, were you as a student ever consulted in regards to it being tabled and what you as a student wanted, or any of your fellow students?
I vividly remember students were not consulted, and parents as well. And there was a large outcry from that because of that. And I think that took a big part in its overturning. And with this being done again, students have not been consulted for this being tabled. And if it is continued to be pursued, it would definitely get another outcry from that.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify once again to all trustees that you can answer you can ask 2 questions in 3 minutes. That includes answers. That's our policy. Thank you, trustees. We will now, and I want to thank our delegate here tonight. Really appreciate you coming and talking to trustees. A response to the delegation will be dealt with under agenda item 8.1. Moving on to the next order of business, that's the approval of the minutes. The minutes of the 6.1 minutes of the May 3rd, 2022 regular board meeting is in your package. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Trustee Guzzo, I see your hand up. Is it for this item or the previous item?
No, Mr. Chair, it's for the previous item. I'm sorry, just to clarify though, since you're asking, are we supposed to manage our own up and down? I thought that was on you now.
I thought your hand was up for this item. So the boardroom will take care of that. Thank you for.
Thank you.
So are there any additions, errors, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 3rd regular board meeting? May I have a mover?
Murphy.
Moved by Trustee Murphy. Looking for a seconder.
Agnew.
Vice Chair Agnew. I shall take this to a recorded vote. Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien. Trustee O'Brien. I'll come back to you. Trustee DeRosa.
Abstain.
Trustee Carabella.
Abstain.
Trustee Boy.
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer.
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa.
In favor.
Trustee Wanchanara. Trustee Guzzo.
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Thank you. So we have 5 in favor, 2 abstained. The motion carries. The minutes of May 3rd carries. We shall now move on to the next order of business, which is business arising from previous meeting. The summary of outstanding items is provided in your agenda package for information. Moving on to the next order of business is the action item, response to delegations. Arabella, your hand is up for which item?
The previous item.
We will go back to the previous item. You have a question regarding business arising from previous meeting?
Yes, you mentioned at the beginning that you would speak to the motion that was passed that was expecting a report at this board meeting for the school liaison officer. So could we get an update on that and why we weren't informed?
Thank you. Let me pass this to Director Daly. Director Daly, would you like to answer the question?
Thank you. Thank you, and through Mr. Chair. Trustee Carabella, we're just not prepared yet to bring back a full report with the directions we were given through the board resolution that came through April 19th. very hopeful that we will have it completed for the next board meeting. It's a fairly complex process, and I want to be able to bring back a full package to trustees so that they can determine next steps in the best way possible.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Thank you, Director Daly. Trustee Carabella?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Guzzo, you have your hand up for this item or the next item?
The next item.
I'm not finished reading the title of that item, then I have so many hands up. So trustees, let me first request everybody to put your hands down, and I'll ask the boardroom to clear that thing. I have something to communicate first. So trustees, do not put your hand up till I open up the floor for a motion. Give me a second. So I would now like to ask trustees if they would first like to group all the responses together as they are similar. So is there any objection to grouping the items together?
No objection.
Sorry? No objection. Okay.
Good idea.
Okay, so we shall group all these items together and have one response to the delegation. In accordance with our board bylaws and policy I-06 delegation to the board, we have 4 options. Trustees may now move a motion to make a decision today on this matter, defer the matter to a future meeting, request a staff report on this matter to be considered at a future meeting, or receive the delegations as information. I will now open up the floor to any trustees who may want to put a motion on the floor on how to proceed with the first delegation. Trustees, you have the floor. Trustee DeRosa, you have your hand up.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose that we accept as information the delegations.
Thank you, Trustee DeRosa. We have a motion to accept as information from Trustee DeRosa. I would like to ask for a seconder, please.
O'Brien.
Seconded by Trustee Murphy. I shall now open up the floor to any trustees for a discussion. Do we need to have a discussion, Parliamentarian Kapoor? No? Okay. Let me just clarify, trustees. 1 second. It's been some time since we had delegations. So on clarifying with Parliamentarian Kapoor, there's nothing that says we cannot debate this motion. Do trustees want to debate, or should we take it to a vote? I see no hands up. So I take it that trustees are okay to take it to a vote. I shall now call the vote on accepting all the delegations as information. Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Boy?
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
Trustee Ohonchanada?
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, none opposed, none abstained. The motion carries. All the delegations shall be received as information. I shall now move on to the next order of business, which is the approval of policies. Item 8.3, policy I-30, video surveillance. Trustee Guzzo, can you please read the motion?
I can, through you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that policy I-30, video surveillance, be approved.
May I have a seconder, please? Trustee Janada seconds it. Is there any discussion, trustees? Seeing none, I shall call the vote on policy I-30, moved by trustee Guzzo, seconded by trustee Ohan Chanara. Trustee De Rosa,
In favor.
trustee Carabella,
In favor.
trustee Bowie,
In favor.
trustee Mastrihammer,
In favor.
trustee Tokiwa,
In favor.
trustee Ohan Chanara, trustee Guzzo,
In favor.
trustee Agnew,
In favor.
trustee Murphy,
In favor.
trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
We have 7 in favor. The motion carries. Moving on to the next item 8.4, policy II-15, International Languages Elementary Program. Trustee Guzzo, can you please read the motion?
I can be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that policy II-15, International Languages Elementary Program, be approved.
Thank you, trustee Guzzo. May I have a seconder for this item? Seconded by Vice Chair Agnew. Is there any discussion, trustees? Seeing none, I shall call the vote on this policy. Trustee Carabella,
In favor.
trustee Bowie,
In favor.
trustee Mastrihammer,
In favor.
trustee Tokiwa,
In favor.
trustee Owen Chanara, trustee Guzzo,
In favor.
Agnew,
In favor.
trustee Murphy,
In favor.
trustee O'Brien,
In favor.
De Rosa,
In favor.
7 in favor, no opposed, no abstain. Policy II-15 is carried. Moving on to the next policy, II-41, school uniform dress code, school dress code. Trustee Guzzo, can you please read the motion?
I can, Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that policy II-41, school uniform dress code, school dress code be approved.
Thank you. May I have a seconder for this item? Trustee Ohan Chanada. Is there any discussion on this policy, trustees? Seeing II-41, moved by trustee Guzzo, seconded by trustee Ohan Chanada. Trustee Ohan Chanada, how do you vote?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Guzzo,
In favor.
Favor.
trustee Murphy,
In favor.
trustee O'Brien,
Opposed.
trustee De Rosa,
Come back to me, Mr. Chair.
your trustee Carabella,
Opposed.
trustee Bowie,
Opposed.
Point of privilege. Your mic's muted. Point of privilege, your mic's muted.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
How do you vote, trustee Tokiwa, on policy II-41?
Opposed.
Trustee De Rosa,
Thank you,
Trustee-
Mr. Chair. I got to step up. I vote opposed.
okay, so we have 4 in favor, 3 opposed. The motion carries. Policy II-41 carries. We shall now move on to the next policy, item 8.6, policy II-44, student mental health and well-being. Trustee Guzzo, can you please read the motion?
I can, through you, Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that policy II-44, student mental health and well-being, be approved.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. May I have a seconder for this item? Trustee Ohan Chanada seconds it. Trustees, do we have any discussion? Do we need any discussion? Sorry. Seeing none, I shall call the vote on policy I-44, student mental health, moved by Trustee Guzzo, seconded by Trustee Ohan Chanada. Trustee Guzzo, how do you vote?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
Opposed.
Trustee De Rosa?
Opposed.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastriamer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
Trustee Ohan Chanada?
In favor.
We have 4 in favor, 3 opposed. The motion carries, the policy passes. We shall now move on to the next policy, item 8.7, policy II-49, English as a second language and English literacy development programs and services. Trustee Guzzo, can you please read the motion?
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that policy II-49, English as a second language and English literacy development programs and services be approved.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. May I have a seconder for this policy II-49? Seconded by Trustee O'Hearn Chanada. Trustees, do we have any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I shall call the vote on policy II-49. Vice Chair Agnew? In favor. Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee De Rosa?
In favor.
Someone's mic is on. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastriamer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
Trustee Ohan Chanada?
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, none opposed, none abstained. The motion carries. Policy I-49 is approved. Moving on to the next item 8.8, policy II-51, optional French programming. Trustee Guzzo, can you please read the motion?
I can, through you, Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that policy II-51, optional French programming, French immersion, extended French, be approved.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. I heard some other sounds there. I shall now.
Yes, I have dogs, Mr. Chair. I try my best to maintain them, but like everybody else, we're human, right?
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. May I have a seconder for this item?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Trustee Ohan Chanada. Trustees, do we have any discussion on this particular policy II-51? I see Trustee O'Brien, you have your hands up. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Superintendent Ullman. Superintendent Ullman, under requirements in this policy, it says staff will report annually on the multi-year French teacher recruitment plan. I'm just curious, when we're going to hear about that?
Can you scroll down to that item? Trustee O'Brien, can you point us out to that?
It's under requirements. I think it's right in the first bullet, I believe. Right. Yeah, more right there. First bullet 1.1, second sentence.
Okay. To Superintendent Ullman. Superintendent Ullman.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I can review when we've annually done that and provide a report to that end.
Trustee O'Brien, do you have a follow-up question? You will have the answer from Superintendent Ullman.
Thank you.
I do not see any other trustees hand up. So I shall now call the vote on policy II-51, optional French programming, moved by trustee Guzzo, seconded by trustee Owen Chinoda. Trustee Murphy, how do you vote?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
De Rosa?
In favor.
Bella?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
Owen Chinoda?
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
So we have 7 in favor, none opposed, none abstained. The motion carries. Policy II-51 passes. Moving on to the next item on the action items. Item 8.9, North Oakville, number 4, Catholic Elementary School, project budget and approval to proceed. Superintendent Merrick, would you like to speak to the report before I read the motion? Superintendent Merrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, we have the North Oakville number 4 project budget for review tonight. Trustees will remember back in October of 2020 that funding for the new school was announced, and it was for approximately $14.5 million for a 671 pupil place school. Subsequently, the space template was approved back in February of 2021, and then we proceeded on with that process, and the board passed a preliminary budget for the project back in June 2021. That included the $14.5 million in funding from the ministry, as well as a $1 million allocation from the board for resolution 170-21. That brought the total funding and budget for the project to approximately $15.5 million. Trustees will also remember from staff report 9.2 from our March 1st, 2022 meeting, where we brought a report updating current costs or expected costs on new construction projects, and highlighted the fact that the construction market in Ontario was progressing rapidly, and that the expected cost for this project had rose by approximately $4.1 million. That brought the total gap for this project to approximately $5.1 million when we include the extra $1 million in funding from the board allocation. So roughly $5.1 million was the gap above the benchmark ministry funding. As such, the staff worked with the ministry to secure additional funding for the project and to try and close the gap. On May 3rd, 2022, so just a few weeks ago, staff were notified that our detailed budget for the project was approved, and this included an additional approximately $4.1 million in new funding from the province to close the gap on the project. The board would still be required to contribute the $1 million that we had initially offered to contribute to the project back in June 2021. Again, that was through resolution 170-21. So in conclusion, I guess, the remaining funding gap was closed by the additional ministry funding of approximately $4.1 million. You'll see in Appendix A, there's the breakdown of the budget for the project, but we do still need to go back and revise the project budget resolution that we passed in June of 2021. So we have one resolution for consideration tonight, and that is to amend resolution 169/21, where we had originally set the project budget at approximately $15.5 million, and change it to $19,587,903. So happy to answer any questions that trustees may have on this project. Sorry, Chair, we can't hear you right now.
Sorry, Superintendent Merrick. I shall now read the motion, and then we shall move it, second it, and then have a discussion and questions. Resolved that resolution number 169/21, North Oakville number 4, Catholic Elementary School project budget and approval to proceed with capital planning be amended as follows. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the project budget not to exceed $19,587,903 for the North Oakville number 4 Catholic Elementary School project in the town of Oakville. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Trustee O'Hearn Janada. Seconded by Vice Chair Agnew. I shall now open up the floor to trustees for questions and discussion. Trustees, do we have any questions for Superintendent Merrick? Seeing none, I shall now call the vote on item 8.9, North Oakville number 4 Catholic Elementary School project budget and approval to proceed, moved by Trustee O'Hearn Janada and seconded by Vice Chair Agnew. Trustee O'Brien, how do you vote?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
O'Hearn Janada? In favor. Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Chair Agnew?
In favor.
And Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, none opposed and none abstain. The motion carries. Moving on to item 8.10, Milton number 9, Catholic Elementary School project budget and approval to proceed. Superintendent Merrick, would you like to speak to the report before I read the motion? Superintendent Merrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. This report will have a similar flavor to the last report, but now we're looking at the Milton number 9 Catholic Elementary School project and the project budget for that project. Trustees again will remember that the Milton number 9 project was announced and funded back in just not that long ago in February of 2022. It was for a 671 pupil placed school with a 5-room childcare center and approximately just under $18 million in funding. And subsequently, right after we got a funding announcement for this, we also received the design approval in late February of 2022 as well. Again, trustees may recall from our March 1st, 2022 report that we had a sizable funding gap expected on this project. At the time, based on the current cost estimate at the time, the funding gap was roughly $10 million. Staff worked with our cost estimators and architects and consultants to revise the expected cost and narrow the gap. We were able to close the gap to about $4.8 million. And then staff then went on to proceed and talk with the Ministry of Education on methods to close that gap or fund that gap. And then again on May 3rd, 2022, the ministry approved a proposed budget where the board would fund $900,000 of that approximately $4.8 million gap, and the ministry would fund the rest. So again, this is the board funding $900,000 through our accumulated surplus, which was our capital reserve. And then the ministry would provide $3.3 million in additional capital priority school funding, approximately $388,000 in new childcare capital, and approximately $214,000 in savings from past projects that the board had on past childcare projects, bringing the ministry total to roughly $3.9 million. So with that, we have 2 resolutions to consider here tonight. We have the first to approve the total project budget, and the second to approve the board contribution of $900,000. And there's a detailed budget that you'll see in your package in Appendix A, and Appendix B is the letter from the ministry stating their additional contributions for funding for the projects. I'll let you read the motion, Chair, and I'm here for questions if folks have any.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. I will first read the motion, get a mover and seconder, and then we'll come back. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the project budget not to exceed $22,715,819 for the Milton number 9 Catholic Elementary School and 5-room child care center project in the town of Milton. May I have a mover?
Murphy.
Moved by Trustee Murphy. May I ask for a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Trustee O'Hearn Janada. Do trustees have questions for Superintendent Merrick? Seeing none, I shall call the vote. Oh, Director Daly, you have the floor.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to note the work of our staff on both of these schools, both our facility staff, finance and planning. Our staff has worked really hard to forge a good relationship with the Capital Branch of the Ministry. We do have a good working partnership with them. So I want to thank staff for their work on this. And really these projects are coming to fruition also because of a team effort with the Board of Trustees as well. We've certainly had trustees advocate to our local MPPs to move the agenda along. So I think that's why we're in a position where we can move the agenda along. So thanks to everybody for their support on that.
Thank you, Director Daly, and I second that. So seeing no speakers on the speakers list, I shall now call the vote on item number 8.10, Milton number 9, Catholic Elementary School project budget and approval to proceed, moved by Trustee Murphy, seconded by Trustee Ohonchanora. Trustee De Rosa?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
Trustee Ohonchanora? In favor. Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, none opposed, none abstained. The first part of the motion carries. I shall now read the next part of the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the use of available capital sources and the capital reserve in the amount of 900,000 to partially fund the construction of Milton number 9 Catholic Elementary School and 5-room childcare center project in the town of Milton. May I have a mover, please?
Murphy.
Moved by Trustee Murphy. Seconded by Vice Chair Agnew. Is there any discussion on this item, trustees? Trustee O'Brien, I see your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Superintendent Merrick. And Superintendent Merrick, this is more out of curiosity than anything. This has a second part motion asking for 900,000 from capital reserve for this school. Yet in the previous item, we voted for an extension on the budget for a school, but we did not ask for the 1 million from proceeds of disposition. I'm just curious why in this motion you asked for the extra as a separate resolution and not for the Milton number, for the Oakville number 4.
Shall I go ahead, Mr. Chair?
Merrick, go ahead.
Thanks, and through you, Mr. Chair. That's because back in June of 2021, we originally approved the project budget. Let's go back to my notes here. I think it was originally about $15.5 million for Oakville 4, and we also approved $1 million at that time from our board of capital sources at that time. So that part of the motion doesn't change. It's just the total project budget. So that ministry contribution that was added in on the, funded by the ministry on May 3rd, 2022. So we don't need to change that amount. However, on Milton number 9, we never approved the initial project budget or a board contribution to that. So it's new for the Milton 9 project, whereas the Oakville 4 project was unchanged.
Thank you for making that clear. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Trustee O'Brien, Trustee De Rosa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification, and to some point, my question has been answered. But so the additional for the Oakville school, the portion that was required over and above was already approved to come out of reserves. Is that the case?
Superintendent Merrick.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we had originally anticipated back in June 2021 that the project would cost about $1 million more than the ministry funding. So we had already approved that extra $1 million from the board capital sources. Due to the approval delays with the ministry and about a year of waiting for approval to proceed to construction, the market progressed even further and the gap widened. And then we requested additional funding to cover that gap from the ministry, and they cover that entire gap. So there's no need to amend the board contribution for Oakville 4, whereas Milton 9, we never had the initial approval. The project was just approved back in, or funded back in February 2022. So we need to fund both the total project budget as well as the board contribution.
So may I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair? So the way I'm understanding this is that there was no requirement for the Milton School at the time, and the $900,000 as a result had subsequent to those initial approvals. Is that correct?
Superintendent Merrick.
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is the first time we brought the budget for Milton number 9 to the board. So there was never any past approvals for using board capital sources, whereas the Oakville 4 project came to the board in June 2021, and that's where the board approved $1 million contribution from board capital sources.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Newest funding that we received a couple of weeks back. So this is a new school. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I do not have any other speakers lined up. So since I do not have that, I shall call the vote on the second part of the motion that you see on the screen here. It is moved by Trustee Murphy and seconded by Vice Chair Agnew. Trustee Murphy, how do you vote?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie? Sorry.
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
Trustee Hunchinora?
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, none opposed, none abstained. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the order of business of is upholding the sanctity of life in fundraising services at the Halton Catholic District School Board. The following is a notice of motion from the May 3rd, 2022 regular board meeting. Trustee Carabella, please read the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will read the motion. I'm amending it very slightly. I'm amending the title to include embryonic stem cell research, and in the be it resolved, I'm saying support abortion through embryonic stem cells. So it's a minor amendment. So the title is Upholding the Sanctity of Life in Fundraising Services at the Halton Catholic District School Board, Embryonic Stem Cell Research. Whereas in Halton, on average, 5 babies are killed through procured abortion each day. Whereas the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World, Gaudium et Spes, teaches, from the moment of its conception, life must be guarded with the greatest care, while abortion and infanticide are unspeakable crimes. Whereas the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches that human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent being to life. Whereas since the 1st century, the Church has affirmed the moral evil of every procured abortion, and that formal cooperation in abortion constitutes a grave offense. And whereas St. Mother Teresa said, abortion has become the greatest destroyer of peace. because it destroys two lives, the life of the child and the conscience of the mother. And that quote, "It is a poverty to decide that a child must die so that you may live as you wish," end of quote. Whereas the church's teaching on abortion, quote, "has not changed and remains unchangeable. Therefore," end of quote from the Catechism, "therefore the actions of the Halton Catholic District School Board should reflect this. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board, because it is a Catholic institution, will not provide or facilitate any fundraising services through any of its school and board office to registered charities and not-profits, including their subsidiaries, affiliates, and associates that in any way are involved in or support abortion through embryonic stem cell research, through advocacy programs, finance, or material support."
Thank you. So you're the mover of this motion. May I ask for a seconder?
Seconded, O'Brien.
So we have this motion is moved by Trustee Carabella, seconded by Trustee O'Brien. Trustee Carabella?
Yes.
I have been.
May I speak to the motion?
No, point of clarification here on the last line.
Yeah.
You have motion.
Oh, so I put that in any way are involved in or support abortion through embryonic stem cell research, through advocacy programs, finance, or material support.
Word "and" changes to "through."
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So that it limits its scope, actually. It makes it smaller, so it should be okay.
So can we have the correction done to the motion?
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have the change in front of your screens, trustees. The
Thank
word
you.
"through" is there. It has been moved by Trustee Carabella, seconded by Trustee O'Brien. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor to open discussion.
Thank you.
Carabella.
I have put forward this motion today because as Catholics, it is important that we uphold the tenets of our faith in all that we do. One important aspect is being aware of where our financial support is going. We need to strive to live out the faith in all spheres of our lives, and we need to be clear what the tenets of our faith are. One of these tenets is the sanctity of life. Life begins at conception. This is a proven scientific fact. At conception, the scientific criteria for life are met. The Church teaches that life should be protected in all its stages, from conception to natural death. At conception, a unique, unrepeatable human being begins to exist. This motion, which focuses on how abortions are caused through embryonic stem cell research, highlights the truth that life begins at conception. An embryo, regardless of its early stage of life, is a whole living person and needs to be afforded full dignity. Pope Francis has spoken to the Italian Catholic Physicians Association, saying, "The predominant school of thought sometimes leads to, quote, false compassion end of quote, which holds that it is a benefit to women to promote abortion, an act of dignity to perform euthanasia, a scientific breakthrough to produce a child, considered as a right rather than a gift to be welcomed, or to use human lives as laboratory animals, allegedly in order to save others. In this quote, Pope Francis specifically singles out not just abortion and euthanasia as being wrong and to be opposed, but also the last part, when he talks about using human lives as laboratory animals, allegedly in order to save others, in which he condemns human embryonic stem cell research. As such, Catholics cannot, in good conscience, support any organizations that embrace embryonic stem cell research because such acts constitute the killing of the unborn. Evil acts cannot be justified as a means to an end. You cannot kill a child to cure a child. An embryo is not simply a clump of cells that will be used for something else, but a whole organism. Embryos are people made in the image of God and deserve equal rights and protection as any other person. The only difference between us and them is a matter of time. Upholding the sanctity of life is foundational to living out the Catholic faith. A human life is a gift from God. It is not for us to tamper with it. Embryonic stem cell research involves the killing of human beings who deserve the right to life. We can't say we uphold the sanctity of life and then provide money to an organization that does not do the same. We need to make sure that we are not giving money, not even $1, to any charity or nonprofit that does not uphold the sanctity of life. If we did, then we would be in danger of funding or promoting evil actions. Parents and students are free to donate to whichever charities they choose, but fundraising done through the Halton Catholic District School Board and its schools must only go to organizations that uphold the sanctity of life. In Halton, there are 1,400 abortions each year, the equivalent of one high school. Put another way, one whole high school of students is killed every year. I speak on behalf of the students that should have been alive today. I hope that my fellow Catholic trustees will vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. I will remind everyone who's on this Teams meeting that only trustees will participate in this discussion. Okay, thank you. So thank you, Trustee Carabella. We have a speakers list and I'm going to track this manually on my paper, using pen and paper, the old fashioned. So we have Trustee Johan Janoda first, and then Vice Chair Agnew, followed by Trustee Guzzo, Trustee De Rosa, Trustee Boy. Trustee Johan Janoda, you have the floor.
Because I want to be heard very clear. Is that okay? Can I be heard? I want to be heard crystal clear this evening. Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Trustee Carabella. So I have two questions. My first question is very specific. And I believe this year in 2022, in February, the motion came through. And I believe, could you concur that this motion did not pass at our board table in February 2022?
Trustee Johan Janoda, the question is through the chair to Trustee Carabella. It's her option to answer or not. So let me ask Trustee Carabella, would you like to answer the question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I made an amendment that was similar. Thank you. It did not pass.
Trustee Johan Janoda.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. So my second question is this. Is there new specific data that's been acquired from February until now that would change that type of opinion? Do we have new data? Do we have new surveys? Anything new that would represent stakeholder feedback from February till now?
Trustee Carabella, would you like to respond to the question? Trustee Carabella?
I brought forward this motion because I can and because I represent stakeholders. And this is the moment I've decided to bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Thank you, Trustee Ohonchanara.
That didn't answer my question. My question was very specific. I'm looking for new data that has been presented to revisit this motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I think she answered 2 questions, and I think you terminated that. If she doesn't like the answer, then that's her problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's not a point of order, Mr. Chair.
Please wait. There's a point of order called. The chair has to first hear the point of order and rule on it. Then we continue. Trustee O'Brien, you called a point of order. Can you state your point of order, please?
Point of order is Trustee Carabella answered the question.
Trustee O'Brien, you have not stated a procedural bylaw or a policy that has been violated, so your point of order is not well taken. Once again, Trustee Ohonchanara, you have asked a question from Trustee Carabella. You did not get the answer that you were seeking.
Correct.
So I'm not sure where I can get you that answer unless you want to rephrase it and ask the question again.
No, I do not need to rephrase. It was a very specific question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ohonchanara. Moving on down the speakers list, we have Vice Chair Agnew. Vice Chair Agnew, you have the floor.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So my friend had triplets born at 25 weeks. They are alive today because of science and research. My friend will be undergoing cancer surgery on May the 25th for breast cancer. They caught it early because of science and research. And any treatment she receives after to keep that cancer at bay and to stop its spread will also have been developed because of science and research. Another friend saw her son saved with a stem cell transplant after a rare disease ravaged his body, robbing him of some of the basic functions of life. This treatment came out of science and research. My son was born at 29 weeks after his brother passed away in utero. His life was saved because of modern medicine and the interventions that have come out of science and research. Another friend is helping her son through a devastating stage 4 cancer diagnosis. He is 10. It was discovered after a visit to the ER, where a sore leg gave way to an MRI, which identified the mass in his leg. He is on his 9th round of chemotherapy right now. This is a total of 6 lives right there who have received life-changing and in some instances life-saving medical interventions delivered in a hospital that thrives and relies on donations from their local communities as much as they rely on funding from the government, because that MRI machine paid for with donations. The stem cell treatment came out of research projects funded by donors. My son, his life was saved after his brother died because the local hospital had what they needed to keep him alive until he could be transported to the closest NICU. Some of the equipment used in the NICU to keep my son alive, paid for by donors. I sit on research committees who are staffed with doctors, scientists, and clinicians, desperate for the chance to work on new treatments and therapies to help people live longer lives with better quality of life and to prevent untimely deaths. Believe it or not, the government does not fund everything that our healthcare system needs to provide what patients need. The reliance on outside funders is extreme. These dollars are often the only way equipment can be purchased and research can be started and even continued. But it is not just about healthcare. There are hundreds of programs in our communities that are so very dependent on fundraising. Another friend left an abusive and violent relationship and found the support she needed at a local women's shelter, a shelter that only exists because of donations from the community and fundraisers. Without this organization, would she be dead today? Would her kids be dead? A family in Burlington who almost lost their son to suicide, but thankfully he is here today because of the intensive work of a local association and their mental health programs, an association that also supports unwed mothers, runaway teens, and women who have abortions. A family in Oakville whose daughter was sexually assaulted and who dealt with so much trauma that she contemplated taking her own life, and who is now supported by an organization specializing in programs and resources for survivors of sexual assault and abuse. An organization that also supports women who have had abortions. That's 3 more lives. So that's at least 9 lives saved because of institutions and organizations that continue to exist and provide services as a result of fundraising efforts and donations. Lives lost, lives that are very precious, lives that impact the world around them and the people who love and care for them. Without the treatments they receive, they may not be here today. Our school communities have hundreds of stories like this every year. Families impacted by cancer, heart disease, prematurity, suicide, abuse, ALS, MS, and so much more. We have lost teachers and parents and children because of some of these tragedies. But this motion would call to cease any and all fundraising to these organizations. This motion asks that we not support these life-saving institutions, that we not permit our staff and students, our families to support causes that have saved the lives of their loved ones, or causes that in the future will save lives through their continued research and programs and supports where lives have been lost previously and where there is a strong will and desire to make sure another family or loved one doesn't feel that pain. Let's not forget as well that this motion would halt the ability for school communities to feel like they are doing something, anything to support a loved one or a friend or a cause that has impacted them in some profound way. This motion doesn't just stop the ability to raise money, but the ability to raise spirits and hope, caring and compassion. I refuse to believe that these collective acts of charity, love, and kindness, which are happening in our schools and across our HCDSB system, are evil. Again, and hopefully for the last time, I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Agnew. I will remind all trustees that we have 3 minutes to debate. And the time, Rosie, is it possible to put it on the screen? Okay, so I'll remind trustees I shall show up when 3 minutes is done. Thank you, Vice Chair Agnew. Moving on down the speakers list, we have Trustee Guzzo. Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. It's a question to Trustee Carabella. So our provincial government supports abortion and stem cell research, contraception. They finance both of these. They also finance advocacy groups, sterilization, family planning, and counseling groups. We, as a publicly funded Catholic school board, funded by the Minister of Education, we then, based on your presentation and your whereases, should not be accepting these funds based on the Catholic institution. And I forgot to mention medically assisted dying. So how is it that we can limit fundraising for these groups, but yet take money from an organization and from the government that actually supports all of these initiatives? To me, it sounds like we're speaking out of both sides of our mouth. So can you maybe, Trustee Carabella, can you answer why then we, as a Catholic board, publicly funded school board, are accepting these funds from the government?
Guzzo, thank you, Trustee Guzzo. I shall now put the question to Trustee Carabella, and she's got the option of answering it or not. Trustee Carabella, would you like to respond to Trustee Guzzo's question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to point out that our schools are funded by taxpayers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Trustee Guzzo, you have the answer to your question. Do you have any follow-up question?
I have a second question, Mr. Chair, and actually it's not by taxpayers, it's by government. It's all taxpayers, not just Catholic taxpayers. And we know that because of the student grant needs. We've had this conversation in our budgets. So a question to Director Daly through you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, in our secondary schools, are there abortions being taught or stem cell research being done in our secondary schools?
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Director Daly, would you like to respond?
Could you restate the question, please, Trustee Guzzo?
Absolutely, Director Daly. My question was, are we teaching the process of abortion and stem cell research in our secondary schools or elementary schools for that matter?
Director Daly?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it, are we advocating or teaching students how to procure abortions? The answer to that is a definitive no. I'm not sure if that's what what you're getting at.
Yes, thank you, Director Daly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Guzzo, you finished, sorry, your follow-up is done. Moving on down the speakers list, we have Trustee DeRosa. Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I would say that every motion, no matter how popular it may or may not be, we are a board that is here to consider and discuss and debate objectively. And every opinion is worthwhile. With respect to my position on this, you know, as a moderate Catholic, and certainly not a perfect one, I tend to look for the middle in all such difficult discussions. I am not a proponent of non-science. I think science, and I think Trustee Agnew in her opening remarks expressed it very eloquently, that there are lives that are saved today as a result of science. And science, in my view, must not be stopped. It must be controlled, but not stopped. This motion doesn't support my position on this, and I will not be able to support it primarily for that fact. As an individual, and this is strictly personal, I have a tendency to try to save a life and preserve life at all costs, with one realization and one exception. So I am a pro-life. I have tendency to be pro-life, and I don't shy away from saying that. But I also recognize that the world is imperfect. There are exceptions in the world which need to be dealt with. And sometimes those decisions, not only are they very, very personal, but they're very difficult. And I think that the decision to make the role to make those decisions of life or death are not only depend on the individual and their own morality, because in the end, I don't have to live with the decisions they make. They do. So to impose a particular position on a very difficult decision that an individual may be faced with is really, frankly, not my position. As a good Christian, I have a responsibility to preserve life, and I have a responsibility to assist when required in making that personal decision. So for the scientific reasons I've expressed, I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
On the speakers list, we have Trustee Bowie and Trustee Murphy. Trustee Bowie, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through you. So I obviously am here to represent the perspective and the voice of our students. And I can say with certainty that this motion is not in the best interest of our students, nor would it be one that they would support. And I will use examples of how this motion would impact our students' daily lives that they run in our school communities and how this would negatively impact them. First of all, many of our partnerships that we have with community organizations such as Halton's Women's Place that would be not possible under this motion are incredibly valuable to our students. I know in my personal experience, they come in to teach us about things like healthy relationships, domestic violence, consent, all things that are incredibly important for our high schoolers to learn. Second, we have students who are doing health and wellness schisms and medical schisms who are partnered with our hospitals who would not be able to participate through this motion. Third, And probably one of the things that is most important to our students is our inability to donate to organizations that help fund cancer research and support for medical treatments. I know that we can see a clear example timely right now of how much our students support these causes and how much it means to them. Currently, most of our secondary schools are in the middle of running Relay for Life campaigns for the Canadian Cancer Society, and I'm incredibly proud of the work that they've put forward. St. Francis Xavier has raised over $15,000. Christ the King has raised over $25,000. Assumption has raised $25,000 so far, $5,000 over their projected goal for the year. And I'm incredibly proud of one of our Oakville schools, Holy Trinity, that has raised over $40,000 for the Canadian Cancer Society. Our students care about these causes. It's incredibly important to them and the work that they do. And it's an opportunity for them to use what they learn in our Catholic schools to do good in their community. So I can say with certainty that students unequivocally are opposed to this motion and that it is not in the best interest of their school experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bowie. On the speakers list, we have Trustee Murphy. Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So I'm scratching my head. I'm sitting here trying to rationalize the debate on this matter has grown into something that is not necessarily what this motion is talking about. People have given very heartfelt personal responses. The reality is there's absolutely no evidence that our board, to use words from the motion, that there is a formal cooperation in abortion. There's no evidence that we're raising funds intentionally to support abortion or euthanasia or a culture of death. Our principals approve all fundraising activities. These individuals are highly trained Catholic leaders who are vetted through the system to raise to their position. So my children are in the system. I'm not aware of any support for these causes that this the Sanctity of Your Life motion would prevent. So I went into websites and the school websites and just ran down a quick list. Maybe 5 minutes I looked at this, and there's mental health walks and runs, there's Lenten toiletry drives, there's dress down, speak up awareness. We all know about the different color shirt days: orange, pink, red and white, blue, green, purple, crazy socks day, Keep Christ in Christmas, dodgeball charity tournament. I'd love to be invited to that next year. It's the note. Food drives all the time. Relay for Life, which through the Knights of Columbus, the chair and I would do the barbecue at BR. March for Life. So our Knights of Columbus Council would sponsor the bus to Ottawa for the Walk for Life. A lot of fundraising for our Ukrainian refugees. There's angel campaigns during Advent. Halton Food for Thought is most schools are major contributors. There was a prom pop-up sale where the repurposed prom dresses would go towards Ukraine Fund. If you go on the school websites and look to see the amount of funds actually spent on external charities is a very, very small percentage. So, after I read that list, I said, this is the kind of board I would want to send my children to. But then I realized that's what I do. I send my kids here. Quite simply, the Sanctity of Life motion is the new big lie. It's a dog whistle. Continuing to bring this motion forward perpetuates the big lie, of which the purpose is to build fear and division. So you would ask yourself, why would somebody want to build fear? Because fear becomes a very easy political tool of choice. It seems to be the popular tool of choice in politics now. It's an easy way to gain supporters and solidify your base. However, truth destroys fear. The truth is that the Halton Catholic District School Board...
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order. Robert's rule states, point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order.
Into the big lie.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair.
This is the point of order. Trustees is the point of order. When there's a point of order, everyone will stop talking and listen to the point of order. Trustee O'Brien, can you state your point of order?
Robert's rule says clearly, you cannot question the motives of a person of trustee.
Check this with the parliamentarian.
Yeah, please do.
Trustee O'Brien, and check this with Parliamentarian Kapoor. Trustee O'Brien, your point of order is well taken. Trustee Murphy, could you rephrase your?
No, I will not rephrase my comments.
I appeal. I would like to appeal that decision.
Okay, we have a point of order called by Trustee O'Brien, and which is appealed by Trustee Guzzo and seconded by Trustee Vice Chair Agnew. I shall take it to a recorded vote. So trustees, how do you vote, Trustee O'Brien? Trustee O'Brien, how do you vote?
So I am voting against the appeal.
Trustee DeRosa.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. We're all compelled to follow the rules. I vote against the appeal.
It is a point of order which is raised by Trustee O'Brien. You said against? Okay. Trustee Carabella, how do you vote?
Against.
Trustee Johan Chanada? I'm in favor. Trustee Guzzo?
I'm in favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
So we have 4 in favor and 3 opposed. The appeal carries. So Trustee.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, you didn't take the.
Sorry. Trustee Boy?
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
In favor.
So we still have 4 in favor and 3 opposed. The appeal carries. Trustee Murphy, you will continue.
Thank you. So what I would encourage those who don't know the truth about the Halton Catholic District School Board to engage with our students, our strong Catholic leaders, our senior administrative staff, our teachers, our chaplains. What they would find is an engaged community that cares and supports each other, who live their Catholic values every day. I see it in my children, I see it in their friends, I see it in my neighbors who attend our schools, the kids that I coach in hockey and in baseball. The truth is, Catholic values are alive and well at the Halton Catholic District School Board. I will admit we're not perfect, but we have a loving Father that has infinite compassion and grace, and the Holy Spirit always guides us back to Him. If this motion was the big truth, I would be the first one to vote for it. Maybe not first, maybe second or third. However, it's obvious to me that this is just the big lie.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy. I have one speaker on the list, Trustee DeRosa. Is your hand up to speak to this? You have a question? You have a question?
No, I don't have a question.
Thank you, Trustee DeRosa.
I don't know how my hand got up there. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other speakers on the list, so I shall now call the vote on motion on item 8.11, upholding the sanctity of life in fundraising service. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
My bad. Trustee Carabella, you have 3 minutes to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hold on. Trying to get my camera on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in closing, I want to just remind everyone that I speak for the many students who are not alive because of abortion through embryonic stem cell research, and who are grateful that I'm here advocating for them. at the Halton Catholic District School Board, we do a lot of fundraising for the common good, and this is wonderful. What I'm bringing to light here is certain criteria that can be used, certain Catholic criteria. And the Halton Catholic District School Board is a Catholic school board. It exists because of the denominational rights of Catholics. And the mission statement of HCDSB says we strive to be distinctly Catholic. One of our graduate expectations is to form a student, quote, who gives witness to Catholic social teaching by promoting peace, justice, and the sacredness of human life. The sanctity of life, recognized from conception to natural death, is a tenet of our Catholic faith and is non-negotiable. Catholics have a moral duty to defend and protect the sanctity of life. As society's morals erode further away from our Judeo-Christian foundations, it is ever more important to be vigilant in making sure that donations from HCDSB go to organizations that uphold the sanctity of life. This motion does not restrict charity. It prioritizes charity for the unborn, who are defenseless. True charity doesn't kill. I hope and invite you to vote to align HCDSB fundraising with the truth and tenet of our faith, that all life is sacred from conception until natural death. Thank you.
I shall now call the vote on item 8.11, upholding the sanctity of life in fundraising services at the Halton Catholic District School Board, moved by Trustee Carabella, seconded by Trustee O'Brien. Trustee DeRosa, how do you vote?
I'm opposed.
Trustee Carabella?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Bowie?
Opposed.
Trustee Mastriamer? Opposed. Trustee Tokiwa?
Opposed.
Trustee Onchanada? Opposed. Trustee Guzzo?
Opposed.
Chair Agnew? Opposed. Trustee Murphy?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
So we have 2 in favor, 5 opposed. The motion fails. Moving on to the next order of business, which is item 8.12, which is evaluation performance of senior staff. Motion at the February 1st, 2022 regular board meeting. It was moved, seconded by and considered at the March 1st, 2022 regular board meeting and was postponed to the May 17th, 2022 regular board meeting by resolution 90/22. It appears as an agenda item 8.12 on the May 17th, 2022 agenda. As a motion that was postponed, it retains the original mover, Trustee Yantamasi, and seconder, Trustee Carabella, from its original consideration. The automatic motion, and it does not need to be moved again. I'll now read the motion. Be it resolved that the Secretary to the Board and Director of Education provide the board reviews of senior staff from 2018 to 2021. I shall now open up the floor for discussion. Trustees have 3 minutes to debate. I shall call. I see Trustee Carabella. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I recall, this is part of the policy that we have about executive compensation that asks for the board review of senior staff. Can Director Daly please speak to this motion?
Director Daly, ask your question, he cannot speak to the motion. So if you have a question, Director Daly, your question.
Okay, I meant not to speak to the motion, but to answer my question about that. Is it from the executive compensation policy that asks for a review of senior staff?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I believe, remembering back to the original motion, it does refer to policy I-45, which is transparency and accountability and executive compensation. The application and scope of that policy applies to compensation of designated executives of the board. So it is a policy that revolves around how we compensate our senior staff. Senior staff compensation has been frozen for the last number of years. So in some ways, the policy is moot.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Carabella, Trustee DeRosa and Trustee Guzzo is next on speaker's list. Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
I'm going to cede my turn, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just seeing that we're not really sure what this is about. I would ask that the vote be called.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Any trustee wishes to speak to this? Seeing none, I shall call the vote.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm a little slow on the trigger here. I'll be supporting this strictly on the basis of transparency and disclosure, which we're allowed to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosa, Trustee Carabella, how do you vote?
In favor.
Sorry, in favor? Okay, sorry. Trustee Bowie?
Opposed.
Trustee Mastrihammer?
Opposed.
Trustee Tokiwa?
Opposed.
Trustee Ohonchanara?
Opposed.
Trustee Guzzo?
Opposed.
Vice Chair Agnew?
Opposed.
Trustee Murphy?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
In favor.
So we have 3 in favor, 4 opposed. The motion fails. Moving on to the next order of business, which is staff reports. Item 9.1, proposed 2022 Assumption Catholic Secondary School Dust Collection System Replacement. Superintendent Merrick, please present the highlights of your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, we have the Assumption Dust Collector Project report here for you tonight. The current dust collector at Assumption Catholic Secondary School is failing and in need of replacement. Staff have designed and tendered a project to install a new dust collector with the estimated cost of approximately $375,000. The board has the available funds to complete the project with roughly $1 million in available capital sources not earmarked for other projects. And furthermore, the board expects to receive through this the latest GSN and capital announcements for next school year, approximately $8 million in renewal funding for the 2022-2023 school year. Staff will attempt to replace the dust collector by September 2022. However, that may be challenging given that we wouldn't see approval on this until our next board meeting, which would be June 7th, and likely come down to material availability, which we know is challenging right now due to supply chain issues, but we will endeavor to get it done as quickly as possible. So we have one resolution that we'll bring forward at the June 7th meeting, and that is to proceed with the project and approve the project budget of $375,000. Happy to take any questions that trustees may have tonight, or we can look at this again when it returns as an action report at the June 7th meeting.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. Trustees, do we have any questions for Superintendent Merrick? Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. I do not see any. Oh, I see Trustee Murphy. He just put his hand up. Trustee Murphy, on the floor.
Would we have consensus to change this to an action item tonight if nobody is opposed to it, and we don't want to lose the 2 weeks if it's going to pass? With unanimous consent, if that's correct, Mr. Kapoor, we can move this to an action item?
Trustee Murphy, let me just check this with Parliamentarian Kapoor. Thank you, Trustee Murphy, for suggesting that we do require unanimous consent. But before I do that, Superintendent Merrick has his hand up. Let me just go and ask Superintendent Merrick if he's got any concerns. Superintendent Merrick?
I was just going to point out through you, Mr. Chair, that we don't have a board meeting for 3 weeks, actually, so it would save us 3 weeks, which would be very helpful in getting this out, the order placed and material in shop drawings and in construction, so that we're have a better chance at hitting our September deadline.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Trustee Murphy. I'll go around the table and ask trustees if there's any opposition to this. Trustees, do we have any concerns with this, with making it an action item? Can we make it and go around table, take a vote, and make it unanimous? Anyone has concerns?
I do, Mr. Chair. I'm generally necessarily uncomfortable with making changes on the fly. Okay, not in particular with this particular issue or this topic, but making changes on the fly like this is not something I'm comfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee DeRosa. So, Trustee Murphy, I don't think we have unanimous consent, but if you'd like to, I don't think we can.
No, there's no point. It has to be unanimous. It's unfortunate we're going to lose 3 weeks.
Thank you. Trustee Guzzo, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I know it's something that you would like changed in the upcoming procedural bylaws, but our practice at this board has been that if it's germane to the topic at hand, a motion can be placed. So I think, you know, Trustee Murphy has brought it forward. If he moves the motion, I would happily second it. And I think that it could actually be in order. I don't think it's something that we can say is not in order because we have done it for the last 3 years.
Trustee Guzzo, I have forwarded to all trustees the explanation in detail on why this is not in order and the way our bylaws are written. It's structured that this is public money we're talking about and we need to be accountable. That's number one. Bylaws are structured so that every action item is notified. Okay, so I forwarded that paper to all trustees, but if you want, I can forward it.
Mr. Chair, I'm very well aware that you forwarded to, and that's what I started my conversation with, was that you forwarded it, that you did send it. Trustee Durant, I can't hear a word you're saying because your mic is not on.
At the floor, 1 second, something is wrong. So, Parliamentary Kapoor, can you pass it?
I was just saying, I started by saying, I'm aware that you sent it to us. That doesn't mean it's adopted. It's something that we're going to change in our bylaws, but it's a practice that this board has allowed for the last 3 years. So it is a practice of this board.
So, Trustee Guzzo, if you have done something wrong and something incorrect for the past 3 years, does not mean we got to continue that practice when we know it's not right. So, I forwarded to you the opinion from the parliamentarian explaining in detail the structure and the why our bylaws are written in that particular fashion. We are accountable to the public for making decisions. And if you do not want to go with Parliamentarian Kapoor's opinion or the way our bylaws are structured, so appeal that.
I appeal it.
Okay. So Trustee Guzzo is appealing the decision of not allowing an action item during a meeting when jump into the topic, Trustee.
This particular item, yes, I absolutely am.
Seconded by Trustee Vice Chair Agnew. I shall now take it to a recorded vote. Trustee Owen Chanada, how do you vote?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Guzzo, how do you vote?
In favor.
Murphy?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien?
I'm against the appeal.
Trustee DeRosa?
I'm against the appeal.
Opposed to the appeal.
Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Mastriamor?
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa?
Abstain.
So we have 3 opposed, 3 in favor, 4 opposed, the appeal fails. So we will not be able to put an action item unless it's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. So moving on to the next order of business, which is information item. Item 10.1, student trustee update. Student trustees, please present your report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And through you, I will be starting with our achieving section. So currently, the student trustees are currently involved primarily in planning for next year's student senate with the incoming student trustees. Some conversations currently surround a return to in-person senate meetings, elementary outreach, and senate applications for the upcoming year. The chairs of the Student Wellbeing Committee and student trustees have also been invited to participate in the Mental Health Strategy Committee, which is part of planning the next 3 years for the mental health strategy. And we had our first meeting today. The senators are excited to discuss a number of topics to help with student achievement and well-being, including the promotion of mental health resources in schools, the teaching of mental health in the classroom, the accessibility of mental health resources, the collection of student mental health data, and strategies to increase student resilience and engagement.
I will be presenting our believing section for today. So during Catholic Education Week, schools across our board celebrated Journeying with Jesus. Senators were stationed at different schools to help. This was a great success because it helped build connections amongst our elementary and secondary schools. During the same week, senators were invited to join Ontario Catholic Youth Day. We had an amazing mass and great speakers and discussion regarding how social justice issues can be connected with our faith.
In the belonging section, so some student senators have reported concerns of vandalism and fights, which is likely one of the symptoms of the pandemic, as schools struggles continue to build school spirit, community, and pride among students. Senate's Equity and Inclusion Committee is finishing up their presentation outlines for their elementary equity initiative, and student trustees also had the opportunity to provide feedback on policy via 60 student groups in Catholic schools.
Thank you, student trustees, for bringing this report to the board. Trustees, do we have any questions for our students? Seeing none, I shall thank you once again for bringing student voice to the table. And we shall move on to the next order of business, which is item 10.2 under information items 2022-23, budget estimates, updates. We have Trustee O'Brien, who has declared a conflict of interest here. Superintendent Lofts, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, please find attached the 22-23 budget estimate update. I'd like to draw attention to a couple of things contained in this report. The first involves the estimated enrollment for 22-23. So as referenced in the report, based on information available at this time, staff is planning to present a budget based on December's revised estimate elementary enrollment for 21-22 school year. So that was about the 22,839 average daily enrollment. Thus, for 22-23, staff will not be budgeting any growth in the elementary panel. Regarding the secondary panel, staff is forecasting a growth of about 286 students over the 21-22 December revised estimates. This represents about 2.2% growth, or about 13,400 students. The second item I'd like to bring to trustees is listed on page 3 and 4 of the report, or page 94 and 95 of the board package. Are the needs of the, and what's included on those pages are the needs of the board
based on growth, enhancements to existing programs, as well as new initiatives proposed for the board. Please note, following staff analyzing all revenues and expenses and discussing with senior staff, the finance team will bring to board a draft budget on June 7th, which, depending on whether funding is available, may include all, some, a revised amount, or none of the requested growth program enhancements or new initiatives that are presented in this report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent Lofts. Trustees, do we have questions? I see Trustee Guzzo has a hand up. Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Lofts, for this information. I have a question, and I'm hoping you can answer it, and if not, I'm sure somebody else can. For our enrollment, what are we looking at for numbers? Are we further down than what you had presented previously when we talked a lot about the unknowns?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Superintendent Lofts.
Yes. Right now, Trustee Guzzo, what we're doing is we're presenting it as of the information today, so we're forecasting stagnant growth. Our pre-registration numbers are still down, but again, we're looking more at what we potentially could have in September, not necessarily what we have currently today. We're still going to do another analysis to see where we're at before we bring our budget on June 7th. But unlike other years where we've seen the chart going up, we are definitely stagnant compared to other years, especially in the elementary panel. Secondary, as I mentioned, we're forecasting a slight growth there, but the elementary panel is where we're being stagnant right now with our growth.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can I have a follow-up?
You have a follow-up question. Go ahead.
So if we're stagnant, to me, that means we're holding firm status quo, and we also have new builds that are coming, and they're coming within the next 18 months. That'd be, I guess, a correct observation. My understanding is there's been some layoffs that have been issued, and I'm trying to understand that, and it might be that Superintendent Ullman might have to help answer that in conjunction. So I see a list here of items of expansions and staff, but yet we've sent notices out of layoffs, and I'm trying to understand that and would like some more detail on it, just because I don't have any detail that has come forth from the board to us as trustees.
Maybe, Mr. Chair, if I could start, and then maybe if Superintendent Ullman is available as well. One thing to remember, Trustee Guzzo, is we're forecasting what we have in September, but we don't know if we're going to get there or not. These are estimates. A lot of the analysis that we're doing right now is based on what our pre-registration, what our numbers are like today. And that's something that, from a staffing perspective, is what we're looking at. A lot of the asks, per se, in this report are also not necessarily, again, we don't know if we're going to have them or not, so I will preference it by saying that. These are just some of the needs that staff has presented. Now, depending on where our budget ends up, like I mentioned in the report or in my preamble, that some of these items or all these items may not even be presented on June 7th. So we're still unsure of where we're going to land at that stage in a couple of weeks, or I guess that's about 3 weeks or so. So we may not have any of those items. So we presented the items, we've shown the items, what we think potentially, if there is enough funding to fund it, we may present back to board. But again, at this stage, we're unsure.
Clarification there, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Guzzo.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So I understand that it's almost like a wish list, right? But that being said, it's a little hard to understand a wish list of positions that aren't student-centered, that aren't directly for our students, when we are having positions that are being laid off that are directly tied with our students. We're talking about teachers, we're talking about DECEs, we're talking about those types of positions which are not higher or senior level. So I'm just, it's an interesting to see that these positions have been presented, knowing that some of these positions that are presented are from the departments where layoffs have been notified. I want to know what we're going to hear about that. Like, how are we going to be given the details on that? Because right now, all we see is a wish list of here, but yet we haven't been given the full information for the layoffs that have been given a heads up for.
Superintendent Lofts, would you like to answer this?
I'm not sure if I can answer it. What I can say, some of the positions, not all, but definitely some of them are supporting students, are supporting the needs of the students. I look on the IT side of things. As we all know, the dependency on networks is tremendous, and some of those positions are, and the ministry has offered funding to help those initiatives with respect to that. So there is support for students as well. It might not be the typical support, Trustee Guzzo, but there definitely is support of students.
Thank you, Superintendent Loft. Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Moving down to speakers list, we have Trustee Murphy and Vice Chair Agnew. Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm not sure if Aaron, the Superintendent Lofts can answer this, or maybe Bronco or Dylan. Two questions. So in the elementary panel, is the lack of growth in the JKSK, where you would assume the impact of COVID is greatest because parents have the option of keeping their children home? And then the second question was, have we factored in any growth moving St. Kateri to Milton number 10 and out of?
Superintendent.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I'll start with the second part first, Trustee Murphy. Definitely, we have had some growth. That's where the secondary panel has seen some growth. So we do have some growth in the secondary panel. A large part of the, like you mentioned, St. Kateri moving back to Milton from the former site of Pearson in Burlington. With respect to the elementary panel, you're correct as well. There has been definitely, at least on our pre-reg, especially pre-registration. So what we're looking at right now, we definitely do see a decrease in the JKSK grade levels, or not panels, but grades. So that definitely is contributing to why we ended up, at least at this stage, being stagnant, which again is something we've never, I shouldn't say we've never done, but definitely if we remember the charts that we've looked at in our enrollment, it's been a increasing growth chart. And with COVID, it's become very difficult to focus. And I don't like to blame everything on COVID, but the reality is we still are in that unknown stage with respect to what to expect going forward with the new normal is. So that's definitely having an impact on how we forecast enrollment. If we just based it on our typical analysis, how we would normally do, we would be showing a increase in enrollment. Having said that, we felt that it really wasn't the best way to present right now, and then having to adjust and do a lot of upheaval in the system. Given that what the information is from COVID, it doesn't look like right now, at least, the enrollment will return to what levels of growth we had before. I will mention this as well. If in the fall we do get enrollment, let's hypothetically say we do have that bump, then obviously our staffing in our classes would have to be adjusted accordingly. So that is one other area as well. So if we do have that growth, and if things change by the time that the fall comes, obviously we'd have to adjust our staffing size to be a little more fluid to adjust for that influx of students.
Thank you, Superintendent Loft. Trustee Murphy, do you have a follow-up?
Only to say that, eventually you have to put your children in school. So after 2 years, you would think that dip would become a spike. So I guess there still is opportunity depending on the situation, COVID situation. In September, we could see an increase. We could recover something.
Thank you. Vice Chair Agnew, you have the floor.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So I brought this question or this comment up when we were discussing this previously, and one of the only concerns that I did have is actually around my sense that we may not be asking for enough extra support as it pertains to our EA staff. And, I hear repeatedly from families in our system who struggle with the EA allocations. And, I know that our independence rubric does a fantastic job at allocating the EAs that we do have, but we know that we have kids that come into our system often without diagnoses, and they are requiring support. And I have parents every year who worry as their kids move through the system, that they're going to lose those supports as new kids come in, and there's only so many EAs to go around. These are our most vulnerable students that require so much additional support to be successful. And so it's hard to see, you know, when a request is made for, you know, a handful of additional EAs. And I'm just curious, I guess, the process that's put in place to determine that number, if you will, Superintendent Loft, and I'm sure Superintendent Ballo can also speak to it. But, you know, if it's a wish list,
yeah.
why are we not asking for 20 and landing where we may land? You know, that's sort of my concern around that piece. Superintendent Loft?
Maybe I'll just mention a little bit. We have been adding consistently every year, even though the growth necessarily hasn't been there. Trustee Agnew, we have been adding EA. So even though the growth isn't there per se, as a system-wide, how we generate funding, we definitely have been adding EAs throughout the system. So the last couple of years, I know this year actual enrollment was down, right? Overall, year over year change from the previous year was down, but we did add EAs, and we're adding more EAs in this budget. So even though our funding model didn't necessarily go up because of the enrollment, we definitely did add EAs even still, and kept our complement we currently had before. So it's not like we reduced their EAs and added them back in. These are new. You are correct, though. Every time we do our surveys, and we do see as well, the request is there for EAs. I can't dispute that request. It's there, but I just wanted to make it known to the public. We are trying to increase it, and we've seen it as well. And year after year, we have increased it, even though necessarily the funding might not be there. We have definitely put some.
Thank you.
Funding there.
Yeah, I guess, and thank you very much, Aaron, and I appreciate that. And again, I probably can't appreciate the amount of work that goes into trying to determine where the asks will be based on, you know, a finite amount of dollars. So, you know, I did want to express that, and I recognize that. I see that every year we are adding additional EA staff, but I do continue, as you pointed out, I do continue to hear repeatedly year after year that, you know, there is this sense that there is not adequate support sometimes in some of our schools. And then if you know, it only takes one student coming in that may have extraordinary needs that all of a sudden throw off the balance of our EA allocation. And so, you know, and we also know that we have high incidences of absenteeism with our EAs because, you know, of the job that they do. So just all of those things, I would love to have seen a bigger request for EA support. And then, you know, if that didn't happen, it didn't happen. But I think for me, Aaron, it's just more curiosity about how we arrive at that number. Like, is that the number we think we need to meet the ultimate goal of all of our students who may require EA support? Or is that sort of saying, you know, we can get by with 5 additional EAs? I think that's sort of where I'm trying to understand.
Thank you. Trustee Vice Chair Agnew, Superintendent Lofts, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Agnew, I don't necessarily have that the matrix as to how the needs are derived. So I don't really have a good answer, I guess, for that, unfortunately. I'll
pass it to Director Daly. Director Daly.
Thank you, and through Mr. Chair, and I don't know, Trustee or Vice Chair Agnew, if this will answer your question specifically, but in terms of the program enhancements or new initiatives that we're bringing forward, I wouldn't characterize this, quite honestly, as a wish list. I think this is what we think we need to support the system, both based on what we've heard from our parent survey, excuse me, what staff believes they need to support our system within the confines of a limited amount of dollars. So I think when we bring forward requests for things like additional EAs or CYCs or consultants or whatever the case is, we're doing it to try and be prudent to meet the needs of the system. I guess the wish part would be if we think we can deliver the service with 5, a wish list would be, can we get 10? So I think what we're trying to present to trustees, and keep in mind this is a budget estimate update tonight, is what we think can meet the needs of our students through our staff in a budgeted environment, I guess.
Thank you, Director Daly.
Thank you, Director Daly. On the speaker list, Trustee Carabella, Trustee Guzzo. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask, I mean, there's no way of seeing here whether each superintendent was able to submit what they thought their top needs were, and if each superintendent's top needs are at least contained here. I'd like to know that. I know we don't see their list, the director does, but I know, you know, we had this one motion that came through as a motion and not the usual pathway of going through the director. And I'm just wondering to make sure that each superintendent did get their top priority and was not deprived. Thank you.
Thank you. This question to Director Daly. Director Daly.
Thank you, and through Mr. Chair. So we do have this conversation and discussion around the senior table, and did bring it to trustees in an information session a couple of weeks ago, where superintendents were in fact asked to speak to the items they had brought forward through a, you know, we utilize kind of a case study approach where we do ask our superintendents working with their departments make a submission for senior staff to consider, to have a bit of a fallback plan as well. If this position is not created, is there another way we can support it? So we do have those conversations and did bring those to our information session a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you, Director Daly. Trustee Carabella, do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you.
Next on the speakers list, Trustee Guzzo. Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarifying question, Superintendent Lofts, if that's okay. So this still may be revised when it actually comes back as a final budget.
To you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
That's correct, Trustee Guzzo. It definitely could be still revised. We're still putting together, as Director Daly mentioned before, it was a list that we brought forward. Sorry. I thought I heard another voice, so I apologize. It was discussed at senior admin and we brought it forward, but we're still doing the actual budget, going through all the revenues, all the expenditures before we can see where we're at. And when we bring it back to trustees, and I guess it's about 3 weeks or so, we'll have a better idea of what to present to trustees.
Thank you. Trustee Guzzo, do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you, Superintendent Lofts.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers on the speakers list, I would like to thank Superintendent Lofts for the update. Moving on down the next item under information items 10.3, school updates. Director Daly.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we have no sound. Is anybody talking?
Yes, I'm getting anything at my end too, so we're just waiting for Director Daly to set
The
up
sound
his,
you're hearing is me trying to figure out how to share my screen, Trustee Guzzo. So just give me 1 second.
Sorry, I thought your lips were moving, Director Daly, so it was my apologies.
Point of privilege, we can't hear.
Yes, thank you, Trustee O'Brien. There is nothing going on here. We are just waiting for Director Daly to set up his laptop. There seems to be some glitch, but do have patience for a minute.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So the update for this board meeting, our goals as we continue throughout the school year have remained the same. A reminder that while the protective measures we have in place at our schools have changed since March break, we still do ask and require that staff and students do their daily screening each day before they come to school. And if they're not feeling well, to stay at home. Our staff and students are encouraged to wear masks indoors where physical distancing may be a challenge. HEPA units have been placed in all of our elementary and secondary school classrooms, and rapid antigen tests are still available for students, staff, families if required. Quick update on extracurriculars. Our spring sports season is starting to wind down now at both the elementary and secondary panels. Our elementary soccer kind of regional cups are on this week. We had to take a bit of a rain date yesterday, but our elementary folks are back at it again, are starting up today. Our secondary athletic seasons are starting to wind down into playoffs now. A couple of events coming up at the end of May. A life skills system track and field day, which will take place at St. Francis Xavier at the end of the month. And then the following day, our elementary Special Olympics track and field meet at Bishop Redding. We've had the Special Olympics track and field meet. That's a bit of an ongoing event, or it is a longstanding event in our board. The Life Skills System Track and Field Day is a new day introduced this year, so we're excited about that. And some of our teams may be qualifying at the secondary level to go beyond our regional competitions in the last week in May and in early June. In terms of EQAO and international assessments, our elementary schools are participating in the grade 3 and 6 assessment of reading, writing, and math, and they're prepping for that. All of our secondary schools have now completed the grade 10 OSSLT, Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. Grade 9 students who are taking math this semester will complete the grade 9 mathematics EQAO assessment as we get closer to the end of the school year. We also have a number of secondary schools who are participating in international assessments, the PISA assessments, both in science. Trustees will remember that we received some additional funding, tutoring support funding from the ministry in 3 allocations, one for the spring, one for the summer, one for September. So we have started up both a in-house sort of tutoring program and also working with some of our partners, LearnStyle one in particular. So we do have LearnStyle coaches who are providing targeted support for students in blocks of 5 sessions. Those sessions began the second week in April. They involve one-to-one tutoring sessions. They're done virtually and they're available in a kind of a variety of time slots. There's also math and language tutoring that we're providing with our own staff. So we did look for teaching staff to be able to participate in after-school tutoring. We had about 120 staff indicate interest. They've been trained in a couple of software programs, Lexia and Dreambox. They're evidence-based programs that tutors can use with students and that students can use on their own as well. Our secondary schools offer extra help after school across various departments. They do that throughout the year, but tutoring specific to our grade 9 math is also being offered, and those students, those sessions began last week and this week, and they'll run once or twice a week depending on the school until the end of the school year. So that's kind of the spring session of tutoring. We're still working on our summer tutoring sessions, but one of the ones that we do know we'll be offering, we're offering in conjunction with the Learning Disability Association of Halton and Hamilton. So it's a mastering mathematics program. Again, it's small groups. It's for a specific group of students. And the focus will be on number sense, numeracy, and gaps in numerical operations. And we're excited about this partnership with the LDAHH. So more to follow on our summer tutoring programs as we firm them up before the close of the school year. A reminder that for summer school, our secondary credit courses run throughout the month of July. They'll be offered in a virtual format, which we've done over the last several years, and in fact seen quite an increase in the summer school credits attained even pre-COVID as we've moved to an online model. So for credit-bearing courses, our traditional credit-bearing courses, credit recovery courses, reach ahead opportunities for our students who are going from grade 8 to grade 9, as well as upgrade courses. We'll continue to support students with special education needs through additional staffing, through CERTs and EAs. And again, that's been something we've been able to do over the last number of years and can continue to do. And I think that's been a really excellent addition to our summer school program offering, that we can support as many students as possible in a way that we can ensure students are successful. From a more of a special education sort of focus, we are offering a spec ed summer learning program with a focus on literacy, numeracy, social and communication skills. We'll continue to offer mental health supports throughout the summer, and a couple of literacy and numeracy summer programs up and running as well. Information will be going out this week, or may have already gone out to parents, about the literacy and numeracy sessions offered for grades 6 to 8 through Thomas Merton. So 2 sessions there, and that I believe that information went out to parents this week. In terms of our secondary virtual option, we've talked about this a few times. We know that St. Clair Vassisi Elementary virtual school will be in operation next year, be smaller than it is this year, but we'll be able to service our K to 8 students there. We did survey parents back at the end of April around expressing interest for our grade 9 to 12 program. Limited options available in this new virtual format, but we did get responses. Not a ton of interest, to be quite honest. Less than 100 parents have indicated an interest in this format so far. So our next step will be to look at what courses those students had registered for in their home school, and then we'll develop option sheets specific to them. Again, it'll be limited. It will provide for compulsory courses and then some limited elective courses. It's a little bit easier to match compulsory courses and even the electives in grade 9 and 10 because students don't have a lot of options. It becomes a little bit more challenging in grade 11 and 12, but we're committed to supporting even that smaller number of students through this remote option that the ministry's designated for us to offer for next year. And just a reminder that this particular remote option is not the e-learning option that we've talked about, but this is the kind of the PPM 164 remote real-time teaching, where at the secondary level, students would have 225 minutes of live instruction and then 75 minutes of asynchronous instruction. So it's not the e-learning credits, it's a full-on remote option that the ministry's asked us to make available for one more school year. And that's, I know that's a quick update. At the last meeting, we did talk about, we're excited that schools are gonna be able to offer graduation and end of year ceremonies. I think I left a slide out actually. I apologize for that. I did have a slide talking about some of our, sorry about that, about upcoming June events. One being our recognition of Pride Month in June, and we'll be flying the Pride flag at the CEC in all of our schools. We'll be bringing a report back at the next board meeting in terms of the work that we've done to provide resources and work with community partners and students and got lots of great feedback from our schools around Pride Month. So sorry, I left that slide out. I'm trying to think of what else we're doing in June. Students will graduate. There'll be lots of celebrations at the school level and kind of a more normal wrap up to the school year. I know that trustees have received dates of all the various graduations, and hopefully through a combination of staff and trustees, we'll make sure that we're well represented at all of our schools at the end of the year. And I think that's going to be exciting for our students. Certainly, over the last couple of weeks, probably highlighted by Catholic Education Week in many ways, that parents were able to get back into buildings. I think that was a great thing we were able to provide. And certainly the 5 or 6 schools that I've been in over the last couple of days, over the last week or so, certainly a sense in the schools that I've been in, a somewhat more normal return, and kids and staff, quite honestly, being excited about, the end of the school year. And I mean that in a good way, but lots of excitement, and there's a real sense of it's a great vibe to be in a school when kids are excited and learning's going on and students and staff are working together and parents can get involved. And certainly the schools I've been in over the last couple of weeks, I've really got that sense of it. So I want to thank our families, our staff, our students for continuing to try and end the school year in that format. I know that staff, students, families, everybody's tired. It's been a super challenging year, but I know that they're all doing their best to bring a successful conclusion to the school year. So I apologize for a bit of a brief update there. If there's anything maybe in the written report I didn't highlight that people have questions on, I'm happy to speak to those items or any other items that that trustees might have questions about. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Daly. We have a speakers list here. We are starting with Vice Chair Agnew, Trustee Guzzo, Trustee Carabella, and Trustee DeRosa. Vice Chair Agnew, you have the floor.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. One thing on there, Director Daly, is the Life Skills Prom this Thursday, May 19th. So I know that is always an exciting event. So just a question, I'm just pulling up my notes here. So a question with respect to the life skills, here it is, the life skills system track and field day. And I'm sorry if I missed it. Is that elementary or secondary?
I'm going to ask Superintendent Ballo to provide some details on that track and field day.
Yes, and thank you through you, Mr. Chair. We have 2 events that are taking place. So we will have the Life Skills System Track and Field Day for secondary students who are in life skills classes on May 31st at St. Francis Xavier. And then we'll also have the Elementary Special Olympics Track and Field Day the next day on June 1st at Bishop Redding Secondary School.
Thank you, Superintendent Bello. Vice Chair Agnew, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Yeah, follow up. So I'm excited to hear that the secondary students will be included. Is there been any consideration given for students who are not in life skills, but who may have another identification or may have something else that would prevent them from participating in a regular team, if you will, and to allow them to have the opportunity to participate in that track and field day? I don't know if that's being done or if it's being considered.
Superintendent Ballo?
Yeah, and thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. We're going to continue with the para division events at the track meets that are taking place in each of the regions. So this is in addition to that. The events that are taking place at the St. Francis track meet are developmentally appropriate, and they're being created and programmed for specific students who are in the life skills programs. But we're going to continue with the para events that are taking place at each of the regional events, track and field meets. So
clarification, go ahead.
Thank you. So what would those events be, Superintendent Ballo, who may have physical disabilities and can't participate? what options are available for them right now from a rec perspective, from a sport?
Sure, thank you. My understanding is that at the para division, there is a 100-meter race, and there are a few other activities like that. And I can tell you that the life skills track and field event was developed by Jody Newendike, and she has some experience with developing events specifically for students who may have more physical disabilities. And she's working with the phys ed department and the leadership team there.
Thank you, Superintendent.
I was going to say she's focusing on developmentally appropriate track and field events for students who are specifically in the life skills program.
Thank you, Superintendent Ballo. On the speakers list, we have Trustee Guzzo, Trustee Carabella, Trustee DeRosa. Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. The question to Director Daly. I noticed that some of the support programs in regards to language support, one of them listed was Lexia. I have to ask about this program because I'm familiar with Lexia, and I know that it does not address all learners with reading or language disabilities. It's not necessarily recognized to assist with all of those or the majority of those that have a reading or language disability. Can I ask why that particular program was selected as one to be used?
Thanks for the question, Trustee Guzzo. I'm going to ask Superintendent Kroll to talk about the programs that we're offering.
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Chair. To Trustee Guzzo, we are providing Lexia License as a tool that tutors can use if it's appropriate for the students that they're working with. We're not mandating that all schools or all tutors are using Lexia, so we're asking them to get to know their students, get to know the needs of their students. We provided those two digital tools as options for them, but it's up to the tutor to work with the student to identify individual needs. So if that particular software wasn't appropriate for working with that student, there's no requirement they have to use it.
Thank you, Superintendent Kroll. Trustee Guzzo, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So that, and I think I didn't get a chance to write down the other one. There was another program that was utilized, something box.
Yeah, Dreambox.
Dreambox, thank you, Dreambox. I'm not familiar with Dreambox, but I am familiar with Lexia, like I said, and although it states that it helps with dyslexic readers, it's not that the programming actually isn't necessarily the greatest for those readers that identify as dyslexic. And as we know, dyslexics make up about 14% of our learning disability. So that's why I'm asking that question. But it's good to know that it's a choice and it's not necessarily what is required, and that there will be other options available for these tutors. A follow-up question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Trustee Guzzo, go ahead.
And I know Superintendent Kroll and I have had this conversation in regards to the summer tutoring. Do we have a timeline on expectation on what we think when we think we'll know about summer tutoring so that we can communicate it and how parents can access it?
Superintendent Kroll?
Sure, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I mean, our efforts right now have been focusing getting our tutoring program up and running right now to run to the end of the year. Now that we have that successfully running, our intention is to certainly turn our minds to what that will look like for the summer. So that's the next task that we have to accomplish. So I would anticipate within the next couple of weeks. We already have asked staff to identify students that would benefit from tutoring, both sort of between now and the end of the year and also through the summer. So we have that piece. It's just a matter of now, again, trying to make sure that we have staff that are interested in doing that work and partnering them with the students that need support.
Thank you, Superintendent Kroll. On the speakers list, we have Trustee Carabella next. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It didn't get mentioned, but there was maybe I'd like an update or about the exam writing resources, about the webinar was supposed to take place, if there was an update or did it happen, and how many alumni students you were reaching out as well to. So just a bit of an update on that, please.
Superintendent Kroll?
Sure, certainly. So I think we had about 9 university students that are working to kind of take a look at the resources that we've developed and provide some feedback. In terms of timelines, we have teachers right now that are working on sort of creating the webinar as we talked about. Information will go out to the system next week to parents and to students. Students can register for the sessions. We're currently focusing on senior math, senior science, and senior business. The week of May 30th will be the first meetings with students and these teacher tutors. They'll go through a session with them on how to prepare for a math exam or a science exam or a business exam, depending on what it is that students sign up for. They'll also provide them with a mock exam. Students will then be given some time to go away and work on that mock exam, and then they'll come back the week of June 6th, the week of June 6th to meet with tutors, the teacher tutors, get some feedback on that. And that'll be it. It'll wrap up the week of June 6th.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella, do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you. I'm glad it was achieved. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Superintendent Roll and Director Daly. Thank you so much for the update. There's a lot happening in our schools, and I really appreciate the wonderful work being done by all our staff and teachers in the system. Moving on down to the next item on the information item. We have construction report. Superintendent Merrick. Superintendent Merrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, we have the Milton number 10 construction report for the month of May. You can see from the photos, work is progressing with the finishing trades. We have lockers going in, ceiling grid and ceiling tile going in as well. Drywall and painting still ongoing. So the next items up will be a lot of the outside works will start with paving and landscaping works. And then we still have some mill work to do inside, and also plumbing fixtures are going in shortly as well. So we're hoping to wrap up the build in the next 4 to 5 weeks as we press on with the finishing trades. Happy to answer any questions that trustees may have tonight on this project.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. Trustees, do we have any questions for Superintendent Merrick on Milton number 10? Seeing none, Superintendent Merrick, thank you and your staff for the ongoing work, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, we have a notice of motion. Item 10.5, notice of motion upholding the sanctity of life in fundraising at HCDSB contraception. Trustee Carabella, can you read the notice of motion?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So whereas in Halton, on average, 5 babies are killed through procured abortion each day, whereas some birth control, such as the IUD and the pill, cause abortions, and whereas abortions by birth control are the taking of an innocent life, a violation of human dignity, and a crime against humanity. Whereas Humana Vitae states, quote, the direct interruption of the generative process already begun, and above all, directly willed and procured abortion, even if for therapeutic reasons, are to be absolutely excluded as licit means of regulating birth. Whereas the Church condemns and has always condemned the use of contraception as intrinsically evil in the vade-mecum of confessors, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board, because it is a Catholic institution, will not provide or facilitate any fundraising services through any of its schools and board office to registered charities and nonprofits, including their subsidiaries, affiliates, and associates that in any way are involved in or support abortifacient birth control through advocacy programs, finance, or material support.
Thank you, Trustee. Did I hear some sound? Thank you, Trustee Carabella.
Thank you.
We will now move on to the next order of business, which is miscellaneous information. The first item here is minutes of the March 8, 2022 Policy Committee meeting is in your package. We do not have time for any school success stories tonight. We shall do that next time. We have a long agenda. The next order of business is correspondence. We have correspondence provided in your package. There's one correspondence there. Next order of business is open question period. Do we have any questions, Director Daly? We do not have any questions submitted. Moving on to the next order of business, which is an in-camera item. We have to go in camera now. So I'd like to have a motion to move in camera, and I'd like to ask staff to
Moved O'Brien.
Seconded DeRosa.
Brian, seconded DeRosa. Recorded vote. Trustee Hunchana. Trustee Guzzo. Vice Chair Agnew. Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa. I'm hearing some sound. Trustee DeRosa, are you there?
I am. Are you asking for my vote?
Yes, Trustee DeRosa.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Duarte is in favor. Student Trustee Bowie.
In favor.
Trustee Mastrihammer.
In favor.
Trustee Tokiwa. Trustee Tokiwa.
In favor.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. We shall now move into camera. So we will log out of this present session and log into the in-camera item, and I'll ask staff not to join us, please.